Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in. Gathered friends, listen again to our tale of binging Barbie. I'm your host, Jay, and with me I have my co-host. All the smelting must have cooked your head, John.
Ah,
Yeah, that one doesn't have a good response. You could do like the "I'm just a cross-wired freak who has weird dreams." That's my
maybe.
new letterbox description. Anyway, this is a podcast about movie tie-ins for toy franchises. This week we are continuing our series on the Bionicle movies. Today we will be discussing the second one, Legends of Metru Nui. This is a prequel of sorts.
Yes.
And yeah, joining us once again is our good friend and Bionicle fan, Toa Legend.
Hello.
I feel like I should change that to Bionicle Expert now, because you're the lore person here.
Yeah, the expert commentary here.
Yeah, this is Legends of Metru Nui prequel. This is very different than the last one we discussed in pretty much every way. This is actually starting out an arc where the last one is kind of ending an arc. Completely new setting, completely new kind of new characters. Old characters that are not as old here as they were in the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, prequel. This is the Star Wars prequel of the Bionicle franchise, which we will get into. But anyway, speaking of Star Wars prequels, this was released in the mid 2000s as well, October 6, 2004. This was, for context for people, longtime listeners, this was about a week after Barbie Princess and the Pauper. Quite the odd follow-up there. And yeah, directed by Terry Shakespeare and David Molina, who directed the last one. We talked a lot about them there. With a story by Henry Gilroy and Bob Thompson. Gilroy and Thompson are two of the creators of Bionicle. And then we have a screenplay by Henry Gilroy, Greg Klein, and Tom Pugsley. And both Klein and Pugsley worked on the Teen Titans and Ben 10 shows. Then Pugsley worked on Young Justice. And yeah, we have art direction by Dwayne Luce and Michael Rose. Luce is a VFX supervisor who worked on the live-action 101 Dalmatians and Mr. Magoo. And Rose is a background artist who worked on An American Tail, Fievel Goes West, Ice Age, and Batman vs. Robin. Not the Joel Schumacher movie, but the animated one. Mm-hmm. So yeah, people who probably had a connection to the directors through that American Tail connection there. And yeah, we have music by Nathan First.
Yeah. And the story for this one goes like this. Taking place before the last film, we follow the story of the city of Metru Nui. Some evil force has been wiping out Toa, so the final remaining Toa Lacan, chooses 6 Matoran to become Toa. This includes Vakama, who is a mask maker, who is also working to create the Mask of Time for Taraga Duma, the leader of Metru Nui. Toa Lacan gives Vakama the stone which will transform into Toa, but gets captured by a pair of dark hunters. The 6 chosen Matoran meet at the Great Temple where they are transformed into Toa. The Toa expect to be met with celebration, but instead Taragaduma declares them imposters after a series of events of just getting great disc or whatnot. Anyway, Toa Onua, Wenua, and Nuju are captured and imprisoned by the Dark Hunters. They get locked in a cell with a mysterious Tarago who definitely isn't Lacan, who helps them uncover their mask powers. Meanwhile, Toa Vakama, Nokama, and Matao escape and go searching for Toa Lacan. They eventually find the facility in which she is being held, and both Nokama and Matao discover their mask powers. They meet up with the other Toa and realize that the mysterious Taraga is actually Lacan. He gave up his own power so the new Toa could discover theirs. Tovakama has a vision and realizes that Makuta, posing as Taragaduma, is planning on putting all the Matoran in canisters and reawaking them without memories to serve his purposes. The Toa hurry to the Colosseum but arrive too late and they are chased away. Makuta uses his powers to put Matanui to sleep again. The Toa collect as many of the Matoran canisters as they can and begin heading towards an exit from the city. Before they can escape, Makuta shows up to stop them. Torga Lakan sacrifices himself to save Akama and awakens his mask power. Together, the Toa are able to seal Makoto away in crystal, and they continue from the city and end up on the shores of the island of Matanui. Using the last of their powers, they open the Matoran canisters and become Taraga.
Yep. And there definitely isn't anything weird that happened between them defeating Makuta and going to Matanui.
Right. Yeah.
That's
If there
just
was something, they would probably have to make like a whole movie on it or something because they didn't
probably, yeah.
explain it here.
Luckily, it's
Or
just
several
one scene
books
to
as
the
well.
next.
Yeah.
Oh man, the timeline here before we jump into the story is as convoluted as the Saw series sometimes. Where in the Saw series they decided to kill off the main villain in the third movie, and there are 10 movies so far. They keep bringing him back by setting the movies in smaller and smaller portions of time while the main bad guy is still alive.
Well, it's
Yep.
easier to put the third film into this one, but it's not as easy to put the books, all the books, into the films because the books take place in the different parts of the films, and it's kind of weird. Even then,
Yeah.
continuity doesn't add up.
Yeah. Last night I was doing a bit of research to just make sure that I was all set for any sort of like insight that I might have missed in my previous watchings of this movie. And I went through like the Bionicle timeline, which is an insane timeline to go through. I love it. They do a great job with the storytelling, but like the actual like main parts of the Bionicle storyline span maybe like a year or two
Oh
in
wow.
like in time. However, the like and that is like from the start of like, you know, the Matoran exit the pods on the
Yeah.
beach, like from that point till um Matanui actually being awakened, it's like 2 years maybe. It's really not that long.
Wow. I
However,
didn't realize that.
the entire Bionicle timeline is about 100,000 years. So there's a lot that happens in these 2 years. However, to put that into perspective, this movie takes place before the Matoran are awoken on the beach. That's how this movie ends. Um, in fact, this takes place about 1,000 years prior, 1,001 years prior to the last movie. And a lot of weird hijinks. There's a lot of stuff that happens that is not shown in this movie that makes it so that it takes 1,000 years in between. In general, a lot of it is just the logistics of getting like thousands of Matoran from one island to another while they're all asleep. Um, but that's kind of the rough like where we are is it is 1,000 years prior to the island of Matanui. Um, at this point, for Bionicle fans, um, both set releases for 2004 have already been released. So both the Toa sets were released first, and then the Vaki sets later on. The Matoran sets were also released earlier that year. None of those characters, none of those Matoran characters are actually featured in this um, movie. All of those are featured heavily in the books, and actually, there's several points in the story where they kind of hint at the fact that the Toa that we see in this movie were were actually not supposed to be the Toa chosen by destiny, but in fact
Ooh.
the Matoran sets were. But then there's like this whole like hijinks subplot of, well, it was Makuta that convinced Lacan to choose these guys because he wanted to make sure that he was choosing not the best Toa that would stop them, but Lacan was but Makuta was influenced by Matanui to pick to tell Lacan to pick the right ones, even though he thought it was the wrong ones. Very convoluted. Um, but set wise, we've had both set releases this year. Um, this year, a few changes to the sets included um, a little bit more articulation. Now all the sets have knees, which is cool. The all the sets also have axles for putting on the masks. Now the masks falling off is no longer a feature, and it kind of harkens to all of the characters on the island of Matanui are kind of uh, salvaged in a way. They've been floating in canisters or in um, their little capsules for a long time, and they've kind of broken down and they've been rebuilt, but there are aspects of them that are just a little bit weaker versus 1,000 years ago where these are this is the civilization in its prime. So all the characters have these they're very well built, and that kind of harkens to that. I think it's also a bit of a marketing technique of people really liked how Takanuva's Mask of Light was not falling off his face all the time. So that's what they decided to do there. Um, and then this year also brought back, rather than collecting masks, which is what previous years did, this year was for collecting Kanoka discs, which we see in the movie are these discs that can be shot out of a launcher. Um, what they don't explain in the movie is that each disc has its own power, and that's why they are used to make the Kanohi masks that we see in the film.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting because I was kind of wondering why. Because plot wise, the discs don't have a ton of necessity, but it makes
yeah,
sense if they're a collectible thing that they want to make sure that makes it into the movie in a pretty prominent role.
yeah, it's really fascinating. Each disc, when they were released, um, each Vaki came with a disc, and that disc corresponded to whichever Metru the Vaki is from. But they also each had three numbers on them, and the numbers determined what power that disc had, how powerful it was, and something else. I forget the third one, but it correlated to a lot of that. So rarer discs had better number stats on them. And lore wise, they incorporated this into the lore where they had the Kanoka games, which were games played by the Matoran using these discs. And the winners' discs were kind of held with the most respect and brought to the mask makers to turn into masks in hopes that those Kanoka discs would be turned into great masks rather than just uh, regular ones, I suppose.
And were the discs reusable?
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, to some degree, at least. I think if they're shot out of certain launchers, they're not. And depending on the powers that they have, they weren't. Um, so the way the Matoran launched them in the games, they were reusable because they weren't able to activate the powers as Matoran, but I believe the Toa were. So you had Kanoka discs like gravity manipulation, for instance, which would probably mess up a game of the Kanoka game. Versus it's basically just kind of I'm trying to remember what the Kanoka game was like, but I remember it very simply as like a almost basketball, but ultimate frisbee basketball kind of vibes. Uh, so yeah,
With
and
superpowers.
yeah, Um, so discs are not necessarily new to the Bionicle franchise. In 2001, when the first Matoran sets were being released, they all came with a disc. Um, these are the Mictoran, as we like to call them, the McDonald's Bionicle sets that were released. They all came with a Kanoka disc, and they were launched rather than like a disc launcher. It was just their arms that you could like swing back and fling them, which is something that came from its direct predecessor in the Lego franchise, Throwbots and Slizers, depending on your regional variant. They had a different name. But it was cool to see the discs brought back here, um, and brought back in a pretty cool way. This is the first time Bionicle is really dipping their hand into, ooh, what if all of our characters had a gun? Guns are pretty cool.
Which we didn't talk about this in the last one, but some of the hesitation around Bionicle initially from the Lego side was the violence aspect of it and how Lego was very reticent to have weapons, especially guns.
hmm
And so a big thing that initially Bionicle was promising is that, oh, we're gonna keep things, it's always gonna be good versus evil, have fewer like gun type weapons. But apparently Lego has relented a little bit more
Well, we
opportunities to
don't
shoot
call
your
them
siblings
weapons;
with.
we call them tools.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they're not guns; they're blasters or
Yes.
launchers.
Mm.
Still effective for hitting your sibling from across the room with a plastic thing, but yeah.
Yep, very true.
That was like, I remember every line of Bionicle, at least from this point going forward, had some kind of thing you could fire at people.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's some definitely worked better than others, um, but they definitely tried to incorporate that more and more. Obviously, the Toa, the only one that came with a launcher this run was Bakama, but all the Matoran came with their own little launchers, and then all the Vaki also had launchers built into their face. Um,
Which, yeah, I was thinking back on this. This was actually the first sort of set of Toa, and I had a Vaki as well. These were like the first ones that I owned. I was looking it up because
Mm-hmm.
I remembered buying, is it Matau, the green one, um, in Legoland. When I went to Legoland, I was in California for my aunt and uncle's wedding, and that was in 2005. So I have the date for that. So
nice.
we went to Legoland, and I bought some Bionicle sets there.
Yeah, this was as far as like um and I won't delve too far because I know we got to get to the story, but like the real world experience for Bionicle, like we've just seen Bionicle hit some of its best years, and now the story starts to get a little bit confusing, but at least for this year, the marketing is still like really cool. That
Yeah.
each of the characters have these really like honestly like beautifully done character intro commercials that just make all of the characters look super cool and menacing and like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
mysterious and heroic. Um
And the music starts
and
getting rad with rock bands.
mhm. Yep, they start adding like they start hiring specific rock bands to do their music, which is awesome. Um and then the vibe of this is in the early part of the year, there's not too much story that's being released because the way they kind of do it is, e- especially early on, they were trying to figure out what they wanted to do with the story that year. And so the story release part is a bit slow early on. Um, but as soon as the Vaki are released, they can add a little bit more story. Um, because now they know what pieces they have to work with, really. And what ends up coming from that is a very like Orwellian like surveillance state kind of story where people are going missing, all the heroes of the city are disappearing or reported to be killed. Um, and all of a sudden, the main hero is gone. There's 6 new heroes. There's a giant plant that's destroying Metru and other parts of the city. Um, and Matoran have been going missing for a long time, and there's a lot of Matoran going missing. And all the while, um, because of the Matoran going missing, the leader, Taraga Duma, just keeps saying, yes, we need to, we need to survey a little bit more. We need to be mindful. If you see people being weird, report them to the police, which are the Vaki. The Vaki are essentially the police, like the super AI powered police of this universe. And the movie doesn't translate this super well, but all of like the visuals make the Vaki to be like terrifying, especially to the Matoran. So yeah, going into this movie from like the child perspective of, okay, I've just watched Mask of Light. I just collected some or all of the sets from this year. Um, the all the trailers make all the characters look super super cool. Um, they just released these really nifty Titan sets, uh, and the story looks really mysterious and interesting. And they've been hinting at what's been going on since the last movie. Um, but I'm a child and I don't have full access to the internet, so I don't really know what's going on. I can't wait to see this movie because it'll really clear things up. And it kind of does.
Yeah, this is an improvement from Mask of Light, just in terms of telling a story from the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, it again, we're as you were saying, we're starting at the beginning of the arc, and actually, because of time stuff, we're seeing the entirety of the arc just with big chunks cut out of the middle of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, we're getting these characters introduced to us as they are becoming important to the story. Um, we're getting these new Toa who are showing up, and yeah, it's a breath of fresh air after the last one, but there's also still some issues that they kind of have to work out in terms of the way they're telling the story. I think especially the first 20 to 30 minutes of this are lots of montages, lots of names, lots of characters showing up, and not a lot of characterization to go along with those characters.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But yeah, I love the dystopian setting. I was
Yeah.
trying to think, because this is not only did I have some of these sets, but I actually had some of the books that I read through as a kid. And I was trying to think if this was maybe one of the first dystopian settings I had been aware of in media. And that's become like, I mean, I was the perfect age for like the young adult dystopia craze. I love the Hunger Games, enjoyed the Maze Runner, didn't really like Divergent, but all of that kind of stuff was fascinating. Ah, yes, that's yes.
Bionicle Adventures series. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one you gave me.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I read through all of those, and I was trying to think: is that like the inception point for my interest in dystopia stories? And maybe it is. I don't know entirely for sure, but
Sure.
I've
Yeah.
always been fascinated. Even like you have the Giver and the earlier ones as well. 1984, obviously, Fahrenheit 451. So yeah, that's just like, and it's such a brilliant way to put the Toa on the defensive.
Yeah.
They're kind of enemies of the state. They're trying to evade capture while also trying to. Yeah, I don't know. It is very. It's not something you're seeing a lot at this point in time in terms of like adventure movies for kids. And
Yeah.
obviously, with like the YA dystopia craze, then it becomes a little bit more common to see this type of thing. But I mean, it's nice to see Bionicle ahead of the curve on something.
Yeah, totally. And like they they really started to be like, okay, what does this universe look like
Yeah.
with this story? And I appreciate that when they went back in time, it is another island, right? It is the islands. If you put the maps next to each other, they look almost exactly the same as far as shape and color schemes and all of that. And there is a lore reason for that.
Yep.
Um, but it wasn't. They didn't just be like, okay, we're gonna tell the same story again, where all the Matoran are fine, and then something attacks, and then they all band together and fight it. It's like, no, the Matoran are kind of, they don't know what to do. They're being led by someone who doesn't have their best interests in mind. They're not sure who to believe. They're kind of turned against each other in some ways. They don't really know what to do here. Um, and that goes the same for the heroes. Like the heroes, rather than being uh these noble spirits who show up to help our adventurers, they are the heroes now. And so it is a bit of a turning point as far as the Bionicle storytelling goes, where now it's not just a mystical island. This is a bigger universe that they're a part of. And now rather than focusing on the Matoran, the little guys, the shift has really started to form of, okay, we're going to start telling the stories of the heroes now. And I think Takua turning into Takanuva in the last movie really paves the way for, okay, there's a cycle here of the small guys turning into the big guys, the Matoran turning into the Toa. So if that's happened once, who's to say that didn't happen before? And so that's the story they tell, and specifically of the village elders, the Turaga, turning into these former Toa.
Yeah. It's interesting that they're kind of introducing this almost life cycle for the Toa of, oh yeah, you start out as the Matoran, then you become the Toa, and then once you have fulfilled your duty as the Toa, then you become Turaga and sort of lead the next generation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it makes sense as like it's a very clear path and one that works very well, and also allows us to have these characters keep on appearing even after they're no longer, the heroes of the story
Yeah,
or the main heroes.
yeah. It's a very like, I think it's a smart way of doing it, because probably one of the biggest parts of feedback that they had for the last movie is that they didn't include the main sets as the like focal points. I'm sure that like that was from the marketing side. They were like, we should probably focus more on the really cool
Yeah.
guys. Um, and so that's what they did with this one. And I think we that shift resonates throughout um, the whole franchise from this point forward. Um, and it's a really, I think in general it was a good turning point. It still makes the Matoran into actual characters and not just uh, essentially NPCs that are required to be saved all the time. But it's also, I think, just a good turning point storytelling wise. It just focuses it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, in this movie specifically, it's a little bit iffy, but the Matoran are still very much a part of this as sort of more a polis, a group who are responding to the things around them. And here we see that in the Colosseum scene as they sort of are excited when the Toa show up and then kind of turn on them. And after that, I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't have more of the Matoran sort of interacting with the Toa. What if they're like, oh, let's go to our old friend. But then their
Hmm.
old friend is like, oh, I don't trust you anymore, so I'll sell you out to the bad guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess we should get this out of the way. I To me, this feels like at some point in the development process, someone probably turned in a script that if they had adapted it would have been 2 hours long, like a full 2 hour, maybe even more than that. And then they took that and they kind of took the pruning scissors to the whole thing and cut down on a whole bunch of different stuff. So there's just, you can really feel the constraints of the 70 minutes here. Um, there's a lot of
True.
stuff that I'm like, oh, I kind of wish they had explored that more, or like connective tissue between scenes that isn't quite there, or like the reveal that Turaga Duma is actually the bad guy, um, which like we get that as an audience, and then the Toa also understand that, but there isn't that scene of the Toa going, "Wait a second, what's going on here with him? He must be the bad guy." They just kind of like know that there's like a scene missing of them piecing together the information.
Yeah, it's like it's there, right? But it's kind of they kind of re-explain that Taraga Duma's the bad guy several different times
Yeah,
to the viewer. But they don't really have the like aha moment of, oh, this whole time that we've been Matoran, we've been misled. And
yeah,
there's no like anger and frustration around that. It's just kind of like the first time the only real time that we see that is uh when they're being when they're in the Coliseum, and Tarag Doom is like, hey, you failed my little test thing, I'm gonna arrest you now. Vakama looks behind Taragaduma and is like, wait, those guys took him. And then he's like, wait, you're you're betraying us. But the way they show it in the film, it kind of just looks like he's only talking like, hey, the guys that took Lacan are working for you. Why you should arrest them instead of us? What are you doing? And not, wait, they're working for you. Oh, you did the bad thing. I get it now. It's
yeah.
very
I
odd.
like that they catch on so quickly, but yeah, there is just that like, again, it's just little connective tissue scenes. That's what I've been calling it.
Mhm.
We talked about that a bit in not just this, but also like the Barbie movies occasionally would have this issue. A lot of the Monster High movies would have this issue of, in trying to cut the runtime down, you end up cutting out scenes that don't seem all that important, but for the audience learning information and processing information and understanding how the characters are processing the information are a little bit helpful. You know, you want that moment of, Vakama's like, oh, I realize now that you are the bad guy, and then you can move on to the next scene. But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously it isn't the most necessary, so you kind of chop it off, and then the audience is watching. You're kind of like, wait a second, when did they realize this? So yeah, I don't know. It's it's tough to be like, oh, this is a major issue. It's more just like these small little things. I think especially throughout, again, the first 30 minutes, we're introduced to the characters in like essentially a montage. Um
True.
and then after that they like all meet up together and have like a little scene together, and then there's another montage of them getting these discs, and then they're in the Coliseum together. You're like, we have just spent like 20 minutes with these six characters and we have no idea who any of them are, like
Or how long
personality
it's
wise.
been like they've been Toa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and that's an interesting thing too. It kind of ends up bringing up the certain debates of canonicity within Bionicle, because the first Bionicle movie is pretty much entirely canon within the story. This one deviates partially in that it doesn't explain some of major time gaps. Um, when they're first chosen as Toa, they do their major quest is, okay, each of us is going to go get these great discs, and that's how we're going to prove that we are Toa, right? And they do that, but in the process, they go to each of their Metrus, each of their districts of the island of Metru Nui, and they start to realize, oh, there's problems that I didn't really notice as a Matoran, and things that I have to deal with. And it's probably several months that it takes them to get these discs. They're Toa for several months at this point. And they might not have too much interaction with each other as they're dealing with their own district's problems, but they do learn a lot about who they are. So, like in this movie, um, like Matau figures out that he can fly then. However, I believe in the books he figures it out quite a bit earlier.
Okay, that was actually something I was wondering, because sort of thinking about the movie, I was like, oh, I could imagine a version of this where, as they're getting the disc, that's when they're discovering their mask powers, except for maybe Vakama, and that's why he feels so left out of the rest of the group, is that they've all got their discs, so they've all discovered their powers, and he's like, oh, I still don't know if I belong here. And I think they do a good job with his arc. We'll talk about that when we get to his arc. But I was
It
wondering a bit.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
also a point where I think also the other Toa just aren't listening to Vakama a lot in the books. He
Yeah.
says and gives really good advice and like, nah, we'll do this other way. And so he's always just self doubting himself
Yeah.
for this entire story.
Yeah. They also they show this in exactly one scene, one snippet of a scene. But there's this giant plant that like wreaks havoc over like the entire
Yeah.
city. And they show it in one scene in this movie, and that's with Vakama getting his disc, but it's like this shot of him holding the disc in his mouth, being held upside down by these like lava vines. That's the
Yeah.
plant that's destroying the city. And it's
Okay.
a major plot point in the books, and it takes like months to defeat. Um, and that is in the books what they assume has been like kidnapping or killing Matoran citizens, and so they defeat it, and then more Matorans still go missing, and they're like, "What's going on then?" And that's when it becomes this. Okay, maybe this surveillance state wasn't actually there to protect the citizens, and maybe they really are the bad guys. But in this movie, it's just kind of like we did a cool scavenger hunt, and now we have the
It's
discs.
it's a montage. It isn't even like scenes. It is literally just, here is this 2-second thing of this person acquiring the disc.
Yeah.
And then, like, we don't even see Vakama acquire the disc. He's just like hanging upside down, and then it's like, okay, next scene.
Yep,
And
it's
yeah,
there now.
I mean, this wouldn't be an issue if we understood who these characters were at this point. Because I think another spot you could add is when Toa Likan is going around and like meeting all of the Matoran and giving them their like stones to turn into Toa. If there were scenes actually built out there rather than him just showing up and be like, here's the stone, goodbye.
Yeah.
You could introduce each of these people in their like habitat, essentially, like what is their daily routine like, and then it's a little bit more impactful when they're like, oh, now we have to become Toa and give that up. But yeah, it's just like, again, they have like 70 minutes and they have to fit all of this in, so they do speed run a lot of those little story beats. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a trade-off.
It to their credit, I do think that they do a pretty decent job of establishing a lot in that 70 minutes
Yeah,
for the overall Bionicle story. This story obviously focuses a lot on the masks and the mask powers, where the previous movie you see some of the mask powers, but if you didn't know that that's what was happening, you probably wouldn't pick up on that. This movie really focuses on each Toa has their own individual mask power, and they don't really know what it is until they figure it out. Um, this
very
movie, however,
X-Men.
yeah, very X Men. This movie does not, however, touch pretty much at all on elemental abilities. They decide to focus specifically on, hey, we think our people can figure out the elemental abilities, um, but the mask powers are really important because the masks are like a big collector selling point. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely a thing of like, especially as a kid, when you have, here are these six characters that they each have their own like power, and you get to decide which one that you like the most.
mhm.
That's a thing we saw, especially in Monster High, um, where we also had large casts of characters with distinct personalities and abilities, and
Yeah, it's I think it's become the modern like children's storytelling for where Disney used to use like animal characters to convey immediately to the viewer what the personality or certain traits of a character might be. Modern storytelling, I think, uses superpowers a lot in that way. Um, we'll get into it a little bit more with this
yeah,
movie, but it almost completely doesn't do that here.
yeah,
But it does use it as a way to individualize all the characters a little bit more.
yeah. It's interesting in like a bigger media sense, sort of the superheroification of,
Mm,
especially just like action media. Like John Wick is essentially a superhero
sure, yeah,
in the John Wick movies.
yeah,
So like, yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't ever made that connection back to like kids franchises though. Like that, and that totally makes sense, especially with Bionicle,
mm,
where they are superheroes
yeah, yeah. It's
to
a
the
super powered
Matoran.
characters that save people that are heroes. Yeah, I but they do establish the idea of masks very well. They
Yeah,
build out this city, which I think in a lot of ways feels a lot more immersive than the last island. It feels just bigger, like there's more going on. That all the Matoran around them are just like they're busy, they're doing stuff. You might
yeah.
not see it, but there's this living, breathing world off screen. Um, and I think that's really well conveyed in this movie.
It reminded me, and I wonder if this is somewhat intentional. It reminded me a lot of Coruscant in the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, just in terms of the design of it and the feel of it is very, and I feel like, yeah, if you're in that era of the 2000s, what are all of the young boys that you're trying to appeal to with Bionicle, what are they obsessed with? Well, Lord of the Rings is done, so now it's Star Wars.
sure,
um
yeah,
but yeah, I definitely agree that this, I like this setting more than Mata Nui, and part of that is I'm not huge on like the tropical island vibe, but and honestly, maybe it's just like the slightly improved animation quality as well, that this feels like a more inventive and interesting setting.
yeah. I will admit that helps a lot. They add a lot more detail, even just in the background art, that makes you feel like, oh, yeah, they're in this like water chute that goes through the city, right?
Yeah,
But the way they do the background art and just different means of texturing makes you feel like, oh yeah, they didn't just have a background for this scene that's just a green blob. They're in the shoot when in reality they're really just in a green blob. Like the animation for that, I'm sure they were like, it's gonna be so much faster to render if we don't have to worry about a city. We'll just essentially green screen.
I hadn't even considered that. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I watching through this movie, having just worked on a little bit of animation myself, I was watching for certain details, and yeah, that we'll get to visuals later, but I have things to say, mostly good.
So, John, you
Um,
haven't talked much about the story. I want to give you an opportunity to jump in here. And
I mean, you're talking about all the talking points there is, but of the three films, I think this is probably my favorite story because I like Vakama. I like the journey of these Toa, starting from these Matoran to becoming Toa heroes. This one has the theme of unity, although it takes 2/3 of the film before we have the Toa all together again, unfortunately. Um, but I don't know. Just keep going. It's good.
Fair enough. I think one thing that this movie does really well is it is like in a very basic way. It's very much like a Breakfast Club coming of age kind of vibe, where it's a
Hmm.
bunch of different people coming together and growing up together, despite maybe not necessarily wanting to or not knowing each other, or some of them not liking each other to begin with. And we don't see a lot of that on screen. We see a very small amount with, Matau being Matau to everybody and then kind of easing off the gas a little bit towards the end. Or Onewa being like a jerk, essentially. And then in the end being like, okay, I guess I don't have to be a jerk.
But I will
Um,
every once in a
but I will
while.
sometimes. um, I
I
do appreciate that part. It
yeah.
gives a nice, compelling story and an easy story to latch onto in that sense.
Yeah.
Uh,
I actually, John, you brought this up. I do actually kind of like that they spend a big part of the movie separated into two groups, because I think it actually
Right.
helps with
Hmm.
characterization, with understanding these characters and their dynamics. Because yeah, you have, because of the toy line, you have to have six Toa. That is too many for a 70-minute movie.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
by breaking it up a little bit, it's a little bit more manageable. The Vakama team definitely gets a little bit more characterization, which they're honestly the ones I found more interesting, so I'm not too
Well, they
disappointed
get
by
more
them.
to do because our
Yeah,
other gang is locked in prison, running around
they're
blindfolded with
damseled.
rocks.
Yep.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, but yeah, that coming of age narrative thing, that's something I hadn't considered, and it is a very smart way to have these. We have these Matoran who are becoming Toa, and it's like, yeah, that has so many connections to coming of age, even just bodies changing and like discovering new things, and that's where like the X-Men are often used as a metaphor as well, for coming of age. So yeah, that's a smart way of approaching it. I kind of wish the movie had time to lead into that a little bit more.
Yeah, this movie, all three Bionicle movies kind of have this issue of they have a lot to do in 70 minutes to do it in.
Yeah,
And the Bionicle story in general is pretty in depth, especially as the story progresses further and further. It gets a lot more complicated, and we really see it in this trilogy where if they just had like maybe even half an hour more of screen time, they probably could have explained a lot more, or they really could have really focused what they wanted into this movie. Um, but at the same time, I'm sure the Lego company's like, no, this is a movie made to sell our toys. We don't need to put more budget into it. This is fine. Um,
yeah,
and you have to consider too, this is a direct to DVD release. They're not making money in the box office. They're
yeah.
not trying to make this a
Although
big release.
yeah, I am thinking of like the Barbie. Let me look this up, just because it is relevant to this since it came out a week before this one.
Mhm.
Because yeah, the Barbie movies had more flexible runtimes, and there are some that are. So yeah, Princess and the Pauper is 85 minutes.
Mm.
Um, and with that one, I think the extra 15 minutes. Now, part of that is that's just like a really well constructed movie in a way that's
And
kind of
it's a musical,
surprising.
so time is added for music, of
Yeah,
course.
Mm.
but yeah, it is having a little bit of extra breathing room,
Yeah.
allows the writers a little bit more space to bring in ideas and explore characters a little bit better. Um, what would a Bionicle musical look like? That would be
I
fun.
was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
If it's the thing from Legoland, then
Yeah, Bionicle Jam.
yeah.
It's true.
I tried watching part of that. I think I made it about 7 minutes in, and then I'm like, okay, I'll finish this later.
Yeah, I think to be fair, you understand it within the first like maybe 10 seconds.
Yeah,
And then you're
yeah.
like, okay, I got it now. They're screaming Bo Rock names at me while they chant. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
this actually reminds me, just talking about like the characters in the runtime, a lot of Monster High, because that also had the same problem with Barbie. The important character is Barbie, and sometimes she has a couple friends, and sometimes Ken is there. And then you have the villain, and that's about it. Whereas with Monster High and with Bionicle, it's like, here's this giant cast of characters. We have six main characters and then a whole bunch of side characters and the villains and everything else. And we're just trying to squeeze this all into a very small package. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, you can really feel this one kind of straining. But I mean, I don't want to be too down on this because this is an improvement. They've learned lessons from the last one. And I think, again, after those first 30 minutes, it really improves quite a bit
Yeah.
as we
I think
start
the
to.
themes as well are much more easier for an audience member to capture. Whereas with Mask of Light, a lot of it's very subtle and
Yeah.
take some time for you to be like, oh, okay, that's the whole point. Where this one, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. That's this character's journey. That's the goal of this team, and here's our mystery. There you go.
Yeah. I think that's a very, very good point. I think they they really craft their storytelling a little bit better in this one, which is good because I think the plot of this story is a little bit more complicated in some ways.
Yeah,
Where like the last one was, hey, here's a mask, walk all over the island until you feel like putting it on. This one is like, hey, all your heroes are dead, your friends are going missing. They don't tell you this.
save the heart of Metru Nui.
Yeah, you're the heroes now. Good luck figuring
You're
out what you
enemies of
gotta
the
save.
state.
Yeah, yeah,
You're on the run. Your friends are in jail, although you aren't really friends with them.
yeah.
Find the great discs.
Yeah. It's like it's so like, what is going on? But the movie does a good job of being like, okay, we're introducing this. This is normal. Just keep going with it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
It's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and once you have that footing, again, once those first 30 minutes are done, it just kind of hits its stride and starts to feel more like an adventure and like, oh, we're having fun. We're learning a bit more about these characters. They're kind of developing their dynamics. And then we get to the sort of last 20-30 minutes, which are, I find fascinating, the turns that it takes. So obviously this is a prequel. We know where this has to end. It
Yeah,
has to end with the heroes essentially
Matanui.
have to
Yeah.
lose. Yeah.
yeah,
Matanui has to be put to sleep. I'm not sure lore wise if he was already asleep or not. It's a cool visual, which has importance to reveals later on. But yeah, they have to sort of put the heroes on the back foot for this last part. And even though they win, they don't really win. It's
yeah. It's kind of like all sides lose a little bit, and
yeah,
that's the victory of our heroes today. Is that they don't
Mhm.
completely lose. It's that they guarantee that the the evil doesn't fully win. It's a
yeah.
give and take.
And I do think I do have issues with the ending. I think it doesn't have a strong enough catharsis. And I don't mean that it isn't a happy ending, because it can't really be a happy ending. I was just missing, I don't know, it feels unfinished in a way that I think is somewhat intentional but somewhat unintentional. Like my point of comparison was Avengers Infinity War, where when that ends, like you understand, okay, there's more story, and like it's a sad ending, but the characters are going to find a way to rebound. But it still feels like an ending.
Sure.
Whereas this is just kind of like, okay, Makuta is in Crystal, but we know that's not gonna last. And the Toa are escaping, and they become Turaga. And that moment I actually really like, when they become Turaga to open these Matoran canisters. But yeah, it didn't have that like moment of catharsis that I was hoping for at the end. Just, I don't even know what it would be. Just something to like close it off and be like, okay, this part of the story is done.
Yeah. Well, they definitely like, I don't know the story writing process. It does kind of feel like this 2004 story was supposed to be the only flashback year, and then they get
Yeah.
to 2005 and they're like, "Well, it looks like they made the sets look like the previous year a little bit. So maybe we'll just keep going with the flashback stuff." But admittedly, I think as far as the movies go, there's a lot that's kind of left up in the air, and character arcs in this movie actually do kind of get finished in the next movie,
Okay.
which ends up working out pretty well. The reality of the Bionicle trilogy is it's more of a two films that are sequels to each other and one film that is the f- the first one released. I don't know. It's a very
it's
like,
Yeah.
can't explain
it's
it.
it's not a trilogy. It is the third part of a trilogy, followed by the first and last part of a trilogy, followed by the middle part of a trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very bizarre way of storytelling, which is about accurate to the Bionicle story, if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's the ending of the film definitely leaves a lot to be desired because the the pacing, I guess, of this story is the first part is I'm gonna explain. Uh, this is all coming from Turaga Vakama's perspective. I'm going to explain my, my home island, right? And these are some of the people in it. And this is kind of the situation that's going on. And the first part of this movie is just all exposition, kind of setting you up for like exposition and montages, setting you up for, okay, now we get into the story. And then towards the end, it's like we defeated Makuta and we don't really know what to do now. So we're just going to jump forward in time. And it's very weird because like, yeah, they defeated Makuta and that is like generally the point where you're like, okay, we did it. That's the victory. We can celebrate now. But you're right, there is that like emptiness feeling of there's that time jump between defeating Makuta and being on the island and it doesn't feel quite right. And ultimately, I think that leaves a really good spot for that third movie to be like, okay, this is actually what happened in between those 2 points. Um, but I agree. Like I by the time I saw this movie, the third movie had already come out. So I actually I had seen the third movie first. I watched these all in the worst order possible as a child. But
I
um
You know what I realized though? I have only seen the third movie.
really,
Rewatching the first and second one, I'm like, oh wait a second, I don't think I've seen either of these before.
that's really funny.
But I know I have seen the third movie.
Yeah. I in a lot of ways, a lot of people don't like the third movie. I stand by that it's one of my I think it might be my favorite in the series. We'll get to it when I have not rewatched it in some time. So
I'm
we'll see
hopeful
how well that
for
holds
it.
up.
Yeah. I'm hopeful for it because we have already been introduced to these characters. So I think
Yes.
it has more space to tell a slightly better story. Not This isn't a bad story. It's just the telling of it is a little bit lacking in terms of runtime.
Yeah. Again, they're trying to do a lot and they're trying to fill in holes where in the Bionicle story, like you have the six main heroes, right? You have the villain Turaga. You have uh Turaga Likan. Then you also have six Matoran and several other Matoran that they interact with throughout the time. They have villains like the ones that we see in the movie with Krika, with Nadiki,
Nadiki.
or sorry, Kreka. There's just an aside. In Bionicle, there's a Kreka, there's a Krika, there's a Kraka, there's the Krakan, which is the Mask of Shadow. It gets a little confusing.
Very, very
Anyway,
Dune.
yeah. So with Kreka, Nadiki, Makuta, and then you also have like in this movie they show the Vaki. They're not really like characters in the story so much as like this really like oppressive force. Um but in the story they have all of these different characters to kind of fill the world building. And in this movie they have to cut out a lot of that just to like get the runtime to work. And I do think they do a good job of it. The story is still coherent, but yeah, it is a little bit shallow in certain areas. Um they did their best, I think.
Yeah,
They
it's a
had.
bit. Yeah, it isn't the best it could be if they had infinite budget and infinite time.
Yeah,
But considering the restraints, and that's a big thing we talk about on the show, is finding the way people are able to still bring things together despite these constraints, despite this being, a corporate product that is meant to sell toys. How are we seeing the artistry on display here?
sure.
And I think this is a good example of both the constraints and the artistic expression on display.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I gave the story here a 3.5 out of 5. Um, an improvement on the last one. Still has some stuff that hopefully the next one will be working on, because they are improving. That's the important thing.
Mhm. I also gave
Yeah.
it a 3.5.
Yeah, I give it a 4 just because I think the actual plot of the story in this movie is both easier to follow in a lot of ways than the last one, as far as like how they set up the world and whatnot. And also, I think it's just a fun story. I think it's always fun to watch uh, origin stories for the fact of like watching our characters become the characters that we remember. Um, I just like the hero stories, so I gave it a
Yeah, it's a coming of age story, as you were
4. Yeah,
saying.
yeah,
So yeah, before we move on to talking about characters, we wanted to take a second to talk about our Patreon page. We already have all kinds of exclusive content, including show notes, our bonus miniseries on the Barbie TV shows, and even early access to next week's episode on Web of Shadows, which we've referenced a few times here. It's only $2 a month to join, and you'll be helping make this show the best it can be. So go to patreon.com/binging Barbie podcast and start supporting the show now. So yeah, characters. Vakama, he's the protagonist here, which I love his characterization, because he's not your typical. Usually, when you have a group of characters, the protagonist is going to be the leader character, um, and they're allowed to have some self doubt, but they're the leader. Whereas Vakama, he is self doubt embodied.
yeah,
It was not what I was expecting going into this.
yeah. The you can tell the writers are kind of stretching their legs a little bit more now with the last movie and the last section of storytelling. All the characters are very much stereotypes of whatever element they are. The fire guy is the hothead. The ice guy is the cold one. The the water one is the mature, like go with the flow but mature one. And the air one is the airhead. And we see some of that here. You know, the earth guy is still, the big strong one, and the airhead is still the airhead. But it is I like Vakama's journey because we know that he is going to be this. this leader Taraga, this big figurehead, this elder to the Matoran. And so I think as a movie geared towards children, it's a good movie that is like, hey, just because like your grandparents know what they're doing now or your parents know what they're doing now doesn't mean they've always known it. It's okay to be uncertain. That's part of the journey. And so yeah, I really love Vakama being not the hothead, completely confident leader type that we see in other characterizations.
Yeah, it's a smart direction to take this character. And I mean, we see it every once in a while. Honestly, I think we tend to see it more with franchises geared at young girls, because we
Mm,
would see that sometimes in the Barbie movie, sometimes in the Monster High. Usually franchises geared at young boys are a little bit more power fantasy. Not that this isn't a bit of a power fantasy, but we have this character who is just lacking in confidence and understanding of his own abilities in a way that's really interesting. And I know that comes up with different characters throughout the Bionicle franchise. So yeah, it's just an interesting way to have your protagonist be, um, especially for Bionicle. I was not expecting this, and I was pleasantly surprised. I do think they maybe lay it on a little bit too thick. Um, he says maybe one too many times of like, oh, I don't believe in myself.
I'm just a
Um,
crosswired freak.
That's
yeah,
just in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think if they had done one, if he had said that one more time, it would have taken him over the edge, and I would just be like, okay,
yeah.
you could stop.
He was really towing the line. I agree.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, you could build an interesting characterization around that. But yeah, the way they have built his character here, and that I just found it so interesting and even a little bit relatable, maybe in a way that I wasn't expecting from. Usually, the fire characters, I'm like, I don't like them. They're the hotheads, whatever. Um, so I was just very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, Vakama in general, both in the novelizations and in this movie, is just a really interesting character. One thing that I went through last night and I put in the notes all their occupations before they become Toa. And in this one, Vakama isn't like he's not a sports guy. He's not a warrior. He's none of the. He makes masks. He's a craftsman. He's an artist, really. He's and I'll probably compare all of the characters lunch club style, not lunch club. What is it called? Breakfast club. One of the meals. Breakfast club style to like different like school stereotypes. But this is he's kind of the loser art kid in a way. Like he loves what he's doing. In the books, he's very good at making masks. He's the best. He just doesn't have the confidence. And so oftentimes he's a little bit overlooked. Um, but yeah, I really do love that they come from a perspective of yeah, Vakama wasn't this great like fighter. He made masks. He's the creative, meticulous thinking one. And we see that throughout the movie too as he comes into his element to become that leader. Where initially his ideas are only half used or partially used. But as soon as they start to take his strategies and ideas fully, that's when they start succeeding more. That's when, he'll be like, I have this crazy idea. And they're like, okay, let's give it a shot. We don't have any other ideas. And when they fully commit to it, they're like, oh, this worked out really well, actually. Um, and I,
I
I really like that.
Yeah, I kind of wish you mentioned his arc in the books being more so like the rest of the team doesn't quite accept him as one of their own and are kind of like ignoring him. I kind of wish we had gotten a little bit more of that here.
Yeah.
Because then he would seem a little bit less of, I don't want to say whiny, but, and
Mhm.
he doesn't come across too much as that. But yeah, if the people around him are sort of confirming his self doubts, even unintentionally, that kind of adds a little bit more to it. And that would have been interesting to see. And then
Yeah.
given everyone else a bit of an arc as well, that they need to kind of overcome their own preconceived notions about this guy.
Yeah. We see that a little bit with Onewa and Matau. Um, but I think part of the issue is they kind of blame him for what happened to Lacan.
Hmm.
They see, okay, this is the last person to see Lacan. He disappeared right after it. There's weird stuff going on in the city. Maybe Vakama's responsible, or maybe he's incompetent and couldn't help, or got himself, you know, captured. Uh,
He's also the only one who even has these apparent visions, and so they're not sure whether or not to trust that as a vision or him leading them to their downfall.
yeah. So he's definitely in a weird spot. He from the get go doesn't feel like he should be a Toa. Though he does come into his own throughout the movie and accepts that responsibility, accepts that identity that has been kind of thrust upon him.
Yeah, and I like his arc until the resolution. I think the resolution is a little bit rushed. But
Yeah,
throughout, as he's kind of, and we even see it in how he has these self doubts when he's like sitting still, but when he actually has to do something, he is competent enough to like do the right thing. So it's really just all in his head. It's his inner saboteur, as RuPaul might say. Um, and yeah, I like that arc, but then yeah, the ending of it is a little bit rushed. We have this thing with Turaga Lee Khan and the sacrifice and that sort of being this big moment. I just wish it had been a little bit more explored. Though I think you had something to say about this Toa in the
yeah.
notes.
So the movie does a good job of spelling out like this is a movie about Vakama more than
Yeah.
anything. He is the storyteller of the movie. He is also the like he's the focus point. But in case you missed that, they spell out his arc in the movie. They do this with pretty much all of the arcs. Um, but they also say so many things in the movie that it's hard to tell what is actually supposed to be really focused on. But Turaga Lacan specifically says the line, he must learn to believe in himself, only then will he find his destiny. And that's kind of I think that's the focal point of this whole movie is that is what all of the Toa have to do. It's focused specifically on Vakama here. Um, but I think this is the main point of the story. That's how they use the mask powers, especially to convey the story. Um, we we see a lot of like the mask powers being used in previous things as kind of a thing that just kind of relates to whatever element they have. Like with in the previous one, Gali can breathe underwater because she's a Toa of water. Liwa can fly; he can levitate with his mask of levitation because he's a Toa of air. Um, Earth Boy strong, Stone Boy fast, I guess. Um, Kopaka uh, has a lens on his mask so he can use X-ray vision, things like that. This movie, they completely switch that. They're like the mask powers might be partially related, but not necessarily, and not in the same way. And I think in reality, the characterization of the mask powers in this film is almost not, it's contrary to what a lot of films do, where they make the powers of the characters kind of be this hidden strength that the characters have. Whereas in this movie, it's almost their mask power reflects to some degree their own weakness in a really weird way, specifically Vakama. And you have a note on this about how you're not a big fan of his mask power in
So
this.
yeah, I think part of it is just its placement in the story of
Sure.
we're in the final fight. Turaga Lee Khan has sacrificed himself, and now Vakama is like coming into his own confidence, and he's finally unlocking his mask power. And his mask power is invisibility, which is a thing that people who lack self confidence, oh, they want to be invisible. You know, that's in The Incredibles. That's Violet's power since she's the teenage girl. She wants to hide away from everyone, so she has the power of invisibility.
Yeah.
So it's like taking this big moment of character growth and then kind of undercutting it by being like, oh, now he has his power, and his power is that he doesn't need the self confidence that he just gained because he could just be invisible. Um, so yeah, I like the idea of like, oh, the masks are embodying their weaknesses. I just think the placement of that moment in the story kind of.
Yeah, it's so I saw this note when I was watching through last night, and I was like, this is, why did they do that? And I was trying to come up with reasons. So I've either gaslit myself into believing that they were really smart about how they're doing this, or uh I'm reading way too into this. But I have, with all the other Toa, and we'll get into them, they all kind of realize their mask powers after they either come into their own or kind of get over a part of themselves that is holding them back. Bakama specifically gets his mask power as soon as Lacan dies. And when I was watching this as a kid, I was like, oh, it's because he was so inspired by Lacan. It's because he's like, so sad. So all of his emotions are pushing through, and that's what activates his mask power. I think watching this further, throughout the movie, Vakama says his whole goal, his whole mission, this entire movie, is to save the heart of Metru Nui, which is, he thinks is Lacan. And he's like, yeah, we got to go find Lacan. He's the better Toa of Fire. He'll fix things. Yeah, we got to go find Lacan. He'll be the one that puts everything in order. They find Lacan. They figure out he's a Turaga, and Bakama's like, okay, well, at least we have someone with more experience, someone that can put together a good strategy. I don't have to worry about it. He might not be a Toa, but he can tell me what to do. And this whole time, Bakama's using Lacan as this crutch of, Lacan will save everyone. It's okay. Lacan will do it. We just have to get him, and it'll work out. And then Lacan dies, saving him. And now Vakama cannot turn to Toa or Turaga Lacan anymore, and he has to be the one to step up and do it. And finally, he has to put through his confidence. And I think as soon as he gets that in order, that's what triggers his mask. And I think without the previous part of the story, if he got his mask power at the beginning, he would have used his mask very destructively, self-destructively. Like you were saying, he's very like not confident with himself. I think he would have pushed himself to the sidelines, really used his mask to just be like, okay, I'm not gonna fight. I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna run away, essentially. But I think with how the story focuses everything, it kind of says, hey, you have to push past your insecurities. You have to push past and become the person you're supposed to be before you can have this power that was kind of a part of you the whole time, in a way.
Which now that you're saying it, I am remembering watching the fight scene between him and Makuta. Like he's running around being invisible, but he doesn't win until he shows himself.
Yeah.
And that maybe that's the moment of growth that I'm looking for. Maybe it's not when he gets the power, but instead when he realizes, oh, I don't need to use this power to win.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's
yeah,
it,
I like that more than my initial reaction to it.
it it's kind of a combination of like this power is a part of me, and he did need it to get to the point where he was, but his final victory moment was not because he could turn invisible, but because he came up with the strategy of using the Makuda's ego against himself,
Yeah,
and by revealing himself at the last moment, it was both the best strategic thing to do, also the hardest thing maybe for him to do, fighting this ultimate evil and not relying on your invisibility in the final moments. Um, but also, yeah, great moment for character growth to be like, this is the way I defeat you is not by hiding; it's by revealing myself. I
no,
do think that's a good moment.
yeah, I do almost wish if that's the intention, which I wouldn't be surprised if this is the intention. I do want to give the writers credit for thinking these things through. Even if they did it, I think it's generally good to just be like, oh, we can pretend they're smart enough and hope that they actually are.
Yeah,
But yeah, I do kind of wish if that's the case, maybe they had given him this power a little bit earlier so that it's a little bit clearer that he's relying on it to remove himself from the situation. And then suddenly, oh, now I can't remove myself from the situation. Now I actually have to step up.
yeah.
Um,
So the way I view Vakama's earning of the power is that throughout the entire film, he's always kind of been. Oh, I forget the word that I was thinking of the entire time. Kind of sidelined, not noticed by people. Like Duma doesn't care about Vakama; he cares about the product that Vakama is making, the Mask of Light. And like when Vakama is being all mysterious, trying to hide objects, Duma doesn't really pay attention to that. He's like, make me the mask, man. Uh, Same thing with the Toa. He try and gives good ideas. The Toa ignore him. Besides the basic fact of Toa Lakan. It's like, okay, that's the one good idea you have, Akama. I don't care about anything else you say. And so when he finally, quote unquote, gets confident in the end and gets his power of invisibility, it's I view it as okay. So now that I have the power to stop you, you want to pay attention to me, but I have the power so that you can't see me.
Mm.
And I'm going to shove it in your face by also letting you see me and beat you anyway. Anyway, that's just whatever I thought.
yeah, I like that interpretation as well. Sort of a different perspective on it that kind of shifts that end to be, yeah, his power as like oh, what is it, like malicious compliance, like you
Yeah,
aren't
in
paying
some ways.
attention to me, so I will make myself invisible to you, and that is now a problem to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he really like in these movies, the character of Makuta is not really like explained much. He's just kind of big bad evil guy.
Yeah,
Very generic. Um, but they do use some of that to like be like, hey, he's got a big ego. Like that's a big part of his character, and because of that, he underestimates a lot of the heroes that he ends up fighting, especially Vakama, who's just this little twerp that he thought he manipulated Lacan into choosing because he's insecure and bad at his job and won't get anything done. Um, and then in the end, gets tricked into essentially punching himself in the face because Vakama's like, yeah, you know what? I'm using your blind spots. I I am that little invisible twerp, but I'm still gonna beat you. And it's not gonna be from a mask of time that I've created. It's not gonna be an ultimate weapon. It's me that defeats you. Um, which I think is cool.
I also think that him making himself visible again hides the fact that the rock behind him is so big. Whereas
That's
if he
Yes.
was
true. Good
invisible,
distraction.
Makuta would be like, "That's a big rock. I'm not gonna grab that one."
Yeah. No, it is. Toa, as you were mentioning, his sort of strategy, he has to sort of put his faith in his own ability to come up with a smart plan.
Just realizing that Makuta has a really good history of getting beat with bigger and bigger rocks. The first movie, it's a Coley ball. This one, it's a bigger rock. Later in the film, later in the series, it's a very big rock. But we'll get into that eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. Is that his kryptonite? Rocks?
Rocks, I think so at this point. They should really like the Toa of Stone should really take note.
Oh
Uh,
man. Yeah. Next up on the Toa list, we have Nokama, who is the water Toa. And you put her occupation as teacher, which I don't think they mentioned in the movie. I like that. She feels like a teacher.
yeah, they kind of shoehorn in all of the professions at a certain point. In the intro monologue or the intro like montage that they do, they show each of them kind of doing their jobs, and some things are a little bit more apparent than others. Like specifically, Lacan goes up to Wenu and is like, "Don't archive this," and you're like, "Oh, he's an archivist. That makes sense." With her, she is teaching people. It's not super apparent whether she could be the student, but at one point, it's either Matao or Onewa is like, whatever you say, teacher. It's like, okay, I guess she's a teacher.
I think my brain, I probably thought, oh, this is a kid's movie, so that's an insult that a kid would use.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, so she in her past she's a teacher, and I think actually, okay, my take on this film, it's definitely centered around Vakama, but I think Nokama has probably one of the best hidden character arcs in this film. Um, she is like the Toa that we see mess up the least for the most part. I'll get into that in a second, but like she's pretty good at what she does. She at the beginning is kind of the de facto leader. Everybody gets together and she's like, "Okay, everybody chill. I I know a lot of things. We'll listen to Vakama. I'll be nice. I'll be cordial. Everybody likes me. Um, some too much, and we'll push forward and uh, we'll get our job done." Uh, she's kind of the person in the middle that is willing to speak up and people don't hate. So she's the de facto leader. And throughout the film, her leaderly decisions, you start to realize she's not a strategist. She knows things, but she's not that creative thinker. She's in this case the straight A student that doesn't take any art classes. That is her student characterization that I'm giving her. We're gonna have a whole fan fiction after this about with them in high school, but that's her role. She's the straight A student. She's doing this TOA thing to so that it looks good on her resume for college after this.
She's in the advanced English course. What was that?
Exactly.
AP?
AP.
AP.
Yeah, she's an
Yeah.
AP student in
Yeah.
languages.
And so because of that, I think she has it's not very visible throughout the movie, but it is somewhat present of this little bit of ego to her. Not like ego in a very observable way, but in
Not
a
not Makuta ego.
yeah, it's like she has a lot of pride in herself. She doesn't have pretty much any self-doubt, which can be a good thing, but I think she doesn't really check herself on that. She's in the story in like the books and stuff, she's kind of the character that everything kind of goes well for her. It's not that she doesn't put in the work, she does, but also things tend to go well for her to the point where,
She's a bit of like a Hermione, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Um, to the point where, like, in the story, she has um there's another Gomatoran who like stalks her because she's just like amazed with her. And it's a little creepy, admittedly, but Nokama is just like everybody loves her. She's good at what she does. Straight A student. She's great. But her arc in this story is kind of, she starts off as the leader and then realizes I don't have the creative ideas to push forward. I'm good at keeping everybody together. I'm good at being the voice of reason. I'm good at listening to everyone, but I'm not the visionary here. And she kind of realizes over the course of the film that Vakama's the one with all of these ideas. And we kind of listen to him at the beginning when it comes to getting the discs and getting Likan, but we're reluctant to do that. And she kind of starts to, I think, push. Uh, she's the one that kind of controls the morale of the group in a lot of ways. And initially, she uses that to be the leader, when in reality, she becomes this amazing support character for the leader. And I think that's such a cool characterization for her. Like, I realize the support role is often given to the girl characters in especially boys media. But I think this is one instance where I think it really suits her and doesn't detract from her character. Um, and I
And
think props her up really well.
yeah, I think she still feels kind of like the leader at the end, even though she's not necessarily coming up with the ideas. She's the one who is keeping the group together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know if there's like a clear leader between her and Bakama quite
I
as
think
much.
in a lot of ways she's like the practical leader, but
Yeah,
she's not the one pointing the direction. She's the one
yeah.
keeping everyone together.
She's the one on the battlefield telling people where to go, whereas he's in the back in the tent planning out the strategies.
Yeah.
Although he's also on the battlefield, so
Yeah,
that's not
he's
a. But
planning the strategies but leading the charge. It's
yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
weird combo. Um but yeah, her character arc when she gets her mask power. I was trying to pay attention to this because I felt, especially reading some of your notes prior to this, I was like, okay, when do they get their mask powers? Because their mask powers, some of them make sense with their personalities. Hers makes sense being a mask of translation. How does what is the event that happens that allows her to use her mask? And her event is she admits that Matau was right. She admits that she was wrong. And admittedly, the way they do the line structure and the phrasing is really weird because the comment that she's saying that he was right to happens like 5 minutes beforehand
yeah,
and is barely related to what they're doing. But basically, Matau says, "Oh, these parts of the area are dangerous," and she's like, "Oh, you're crazy," and then they're running away from a horde of Kikanalo, and she's like, "You're right, I was wrong," and he's like, "Yeah, I knew it," and then she's like, "Oh, I have a mask power now. Cool."
yeah, and that it's translation, which I think what the movie is trying to say is that she talks too much, which I disagree with. Um, I think they're trying to be like, oh, she needs to listen more, and I'm like, no, she knows what she's doing. Like even if she doesn't always like, yeah, she is very competent.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think I like your characterization of her arc, and it's something that I definitely missed um, watching. And yeah, again, a lot of these things I think you are pulling stuff because Bionicle lore is so rich. You're pulling this stuff from the lore and finding things that are maybe in the books a little bit more that these movies just don't have the time to explore. Um,
Yeah, that is the one downside. Like, I remember watching this quite a few times as a kid because uh, we had a mutual friend that really like hyper focused on this movie a lot, to the point where I remember being a kid on the playground and reenacting a lot of these scenes with this friend. Um, and watching this as a kid, like I didn't pick up on a lot of this stuff. And I think you're right. A big reason why maybe I'm picking up on this stuff now is, one, I'm probably reading into things a lot more than they intended. But
I
also,
mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think you are pulling stuff that makes sense with the story.
yeah. But I think you're right in that it helps a lot. Like, it smooths a lot of the bumps in this film when you've read the novelizations, or when you've
Yeah.
read the comics or played the games or whatnot.
Also, a lot of the mask powers show up at the best moments possible to solve their situations. So, uh,
True.
yeah, so it's like Nokama. She's running away, and she's probably thinking, "Man, I wish there was some way for me to get out of this situation that doesn't involve running and being trampled." Suddenly, she starts hearing the Kikanella speaking. It's like, "Hold on, I can communicate with this." Oh, I have my mask power that translate. You have Onoa in the dark. Huh. I wish I could see flashlight. It's
The Mask of Flashlight.
We love the Mask of Flashlight. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. Is they happen when the Toa need them or are in desperation as well.
Mata.
Um,
I wish I could screw with these guys. Holy crap, I can transform.
yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, which
Um,
that is more the X-Men approach of like, oh, it shows up in times of stress.
yeah, with Nokama's mask, I remember watching as a kid and not really fully understanding what her mask is. I thought, oh, she can talk to the Kikanalo because she's a teacher. Maybe she just like took a Kikanalo course or something. I don't know. Um, but then I was talking to this friend from elementary. We were speculating on mask powers, and this person was like, "Oh, well, obviously it's the mask of asking people to stop nicely." I'm like, wait, explain. And he's like, well, she puts out her hand so it like stops them. I'm like, okay, so mind control, but somebody else already has mind control. And they're like, no, 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 it's like it's a little bit more gentle than that. Like, they don't have to stop, but she's like asking him. I was like, I guess that sounds like a dumb mask power though. And like, until I looked into the lore and was like, oh yeah, it's translation. It's obviously translation. It did take me a little bit to pick up on, and I think part of that is the Kikanalo make the Kikanalo like voice sounds, but her mask translation sound is just like a shimmer, and so I never really fully picked up on it.
Yeah.
Um, but it makes sense for her. One thing I should probably mention is the mask powers that they have were not chosen for them as Toa for this story. The Taraga all had these masks when they were first released in
Oh,
2001.
okay.
So, and these were all supposed to be like lesser masks because these were noble masks that the Taraga wore. So in Bionicle, there's regular Matoran masks, there's noble masks which grant a small amount of power, and there's great masks which grant like Toa level power. And so up until this point, the Taraga had these like noble masks that they could use in specific ways. Um, as an example, the mask of illusion, which is what Matau wears, uh, didn't allow himself to shapeshift. When he was a Taraga, he can just kind of make images appear. He can mess with people that way. But as a Toa, he can fully shapeshift. Um, So all of these masks were decided before there was even an idea of them being a Toa. So the movie does its best to incorporate them, but yeah, a lot of their masks don't fully fit with like their personality or their uh, elemental abilities because that's not what they were really intended for. Um,
Yeah.
so Nokama's, I think, was initially just translation because she was, an elder that was wise and could translate old texts. Um, but they use that in this movie to be like, oh yeah, she can just speak to anything. I guess that'll work.
Yeah. That does make more sense to me. I do kind of wish they had reverse engineered a little bit better the characters, though it is kind of hard to engineer a character around the mask of flashlight. So
Well, we'll get
that's
to
true.
that.
Yeah, we'll get to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
uh,
Now, next up on our list of characters, sort of rounding out this first trio, is Matau, the air guy who's a
yeah,
vehicle test driver. He's the hothead.
yeah, very much so. I think his like if you wanted to describe him in one word, I would say he's the immature one of the group. He's the
Yeah,
Also, the
one
comedic
that's
relief. Yeah.
yeah, he's definitely the comedic relief, but he's the one that's like he's making jokes at inappropriate times or he's flirting with his coworker or he
oh boy.
he's just immature and he's saying things out of pocket when they don't need to be said. Uh and yeah, he's a bit annoying.
So Guy Gardner.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think he is really well characterized here, but I find that characterization annoying.
Oh, I
yeah,
love him.
Yeah,
he's.
I
It's interesting because like they pulled the characterizations partially from how they already established them as Taraga from like the writing side, and Matau is kind of a bit of like an old kooky trickster when he's a Taraga. So I think in this they're like, oh yeah, he's gonna be a bit of a trickster. That makes sense. Um, but yeah, he's in this. It does come across as annoying sometimes. I will say.
yeah, and part of that is just my preference for character types.
Sure.
I don't tend to gravitate towards the hothead, immature ones. So yeah, I think he is very well characterized as that, though. Like the
Mhm.
story does a good job setting him up as that, and part of that is this is just an easy thing to communicate to the audience, whereas some of the other Toa, their character traits are a little bit more difficult to impart in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's true. It also like I think is one of those that kind of relates to the older sibling where it's like, oh, Matau's the younger brother of this group.
Yeah,
He's a bit annoying. You still love him, but like you may not like him all the time.
which yeah, as an older sibling, maybe that's why I don't love this character type.
He's also the only character that I can think of in this film that doesn't really have an arc that involves his mask. In fact, he doesn't have much of a character arc in this film at all. He might
Yeah,
he becomes maybe a little bit more mature towards the end, but not by much. He just kind of starts letting uh Vakama speak a little bit more. Um his mask power is the only mask power that doesn't happen with even just like a small amount of like yeah, you have to realize who you are before you can use it. You have to, stop looking at the past or stop looking at the future or stop trying to hide from who you are. It's just like, oh, hey, what if I prank those two dudes? That could be funny. So it is very weird, but I don't know how closely this and the next movie were written, but they kind of use that open endedness for his character arc to make his character arc uh, reach into the next movie. I would say he gets a better character arc in the next movie, and it works out quite a bit better, I think.
That's good to hear. Because yeah, here he is very much the class clown.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the few of the Toa that immediately fully accepts his position of being a Toa, perhaps for the wrong reasons, where it's like, I'm a Toa, cool. I can be popular and be
Mhm.
cool. um, and he's humbled very early on. So,
Very
but he
frequently.
but yeah, he everyone else learns to become Toa and accepts it. And he very from the get go, it's like, yes, I'm a Toa, cool.
Hmm.
He has to learn to become Toa in the other direction. He has to lose a bit of his confidence, whereas everyone else has to gain a little bit of confidence.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny little guy.
Hmm.
He also in this movie, like tying in with the toys, he gets wings. He's able to fly. He drinks his Red Bull. Um and
He
which
does seem like he would drink Red Bull.
yeah, actually. But so he has wings, he can fly. That's part of the sets. A lot of the iconography is around him being able to fly by putting his blades on his back. That's used with a lot of the Toa of Air, especially in these first 4 years. It's a big part of, oh yeah, it's a Toa of Air. He should be able to fly. That makes sense. Um, Little known fact, unless you've read the comics or the books, Vakama also can fly.
Yeah.
His like disc launcher is also a jetpack in
Oh,
the story, and that's why
Oh,
if you look at the piece, it has like little flames on it.
although, like the toy's not built the way it's supposed to be, where the launcher is facing up, whereas in the comic the launcher is facing down. It doesn't quite work
Right.
as well that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So it is a little weird. And in the actual story of it, I believe they break his jetpack before the final Makuta fight. Um, so he can't use that there or in future parts of the story. So it is kind of a MacGuffin that they're like, hey, this is cool, and if you put the pieces together like this, it makes your character cooler. But also story wise, we can't let him be cool for too long. It breaks our story.
yeah.
uh, but yeah, so Matau does get wings, and he only ever really uses them as like a glider, I
Yeah.
guess, one time. It's really a moment in the story that's like, oh, okay, this is just a bit of a tie-in. This is not set up for anything else in the story.
Which, so I was confused when they initially revealed his mask power. I was like, oh, is he like he can fly? Is that his mask power that he can fly? And then it's like, no, it's shapeshifting. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Okay, sure. Why not?
yeah. It would have made more sense for, he's falling off a cliff. He calls upon his mask power. Whoa, it's the mask power of flight. That makes sense. No,
no,
it's actually
the
not.
tools are dual purpose for most
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Makama, it's a launcher, but it's also a jetpack. Wenoa, I could smack you with it, but it's also a drill.
Yeah. No comma, like the way, okay. The Toa tools, just taking a quick aside, in this movie, Vakama uses a launcher, sure. Matau uses his blades only as wings, sure. Wanua uses his like drill thing at one point. That looks cool. Um Onewa is just like, whoa, now this is a Toa tool, and we don't see it ever again in this movie.
He uses it to destroy a pillar at the end, and that's it.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
I think maybe they just couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah, I
But no
mean, it's better
comma.
than Nuju doesn't use his at all. I
Yeah.
think there's one scene where he kind of uses it, but the camera pushes it out of frame.
He uses it to stop himself from falling to get to the disc.
Yeah, but you
That-
don't really see it very much. And to be fair,
Well,
his weapons are kind of like snowshoes or spiky tennis rackets. It's not a very clear weapon, so I could kind of understand it. But yeah, the tools, they like the idea, I think, especially after the Toa Nuva, of having multi-purpose tools, which they do have with the Toa Nuva being, a surfboard or ice skates or roller skates
drills.
slash chainsaws. Yeah, it gets a little bit wonkier as you go, but um, I think they like the idea of, oh yeah, this is a dual purpose thing, and I think that idea is something I wish they kept a little bit more throughout the franchise, because I think it plays into the Lego building aspect of, oh, I can use this piece in multiple different ways versus um, the next two set releases. eh, Well, the next set release, I'll say, is very much, this is a blade attached to your hand. Have
Good
fun.
luck.
Go
Yeah.
fight the spiders.
But yeah, so Matau, he gets his Toa tool of being able to fly, uses it once, and then does not use that afterwards. Which I don't remember. I would need to look in the story. It might just be that his wings don't actually give him flight. Like there's no like thruster to it. It might just be a
Yeah,
glider. Um, but I don't
I
know.
think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's at least kind of how they show it in this movie,
Yeah.
and he doesn't use it to fly anywhere. So I don't know.
So yeah, the other Toa don't get quite as strong of characterizations in this
Yeah,
movie, at least. Um Nuju, he's the ice one, the astronomer who's introduced looking through the um telescope,
Telescope.
and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of neat," and then he just kind of doesn't do much for the rest of the movie.
yeah. This is, if we're, going back to the class analogies. This is kind of like the nerd that is an introvert out of social awkwardness, I think, and not because they don't want to make friends. It's just that they're like, they don't really know how, and they might try, but at the end of the day, they're like, I like my telescope. Maybe I
Yeah,
don't need friends that much.
I'm too smart for you. I don't need
Yeah.
friends. Too good. He's wrong all the time.
Yeah. Um, but he's just a little bit socially awkward. He's very concentrated on, especially the future. He's like, a big part of Nuju is that he knows how to read the stars, um, which becomes important later on in the overarching narrative. But we actually see him using this talent later on in the movie when the Toa star explodes into six. Um, he looks at it and says, "Whoa!" Matanui declares it. We are Toa. Like Matanui's decided that he recognizes us now,
While being asleep,
um,
of course.
while being asleep. He's got some nice dreams, I guess.
Very astrology.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
star. What are the stars? Do they have stars in there?
they do. It's so, not to say too much about, not to spoil decade old plot point. But they're more like readings for, they're like the developer console of the
Okay.
universe, I guess is how I would put it. That not everybody knows how to read.
There's something.
There's
They
something.
look like stars.
I mean, they've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
they've got the sun there. They, at least they have bright light. So got something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nuju is he each of these next three kind of have like a very small character arc, and it's only represented really in that scene of them learning their mask powers. His arc is hinted at with, uh, Taraga Khan kind of shoehorns it in with being like, you're too focused on the future. You need to be more focused on the present. What's happening right now? Like, step up, be a part of what's happening. And I guess I don't know how building a tower really helps with that, but I think it's more of, hey, this is what it feels like to move stone with your hands. Now do it
Yeah.
with your mind. Um,
Now shoot laser beams once and never again.
yeah, the laser beam part is a little bit weird, I'll admit. And I also, again, love when these old movies are like, we need to do slow mo, but we didn't render enough frames. So we're just going to render it at half frames and it'll be fine.
I was like, oh boy, is this buffering or something? Nope.
Yeah,
Nope, my frame rate's dropping. No, wait, no, this is a movie. It's pre-rendered.
it's pre rendered.
Uh,
Uh,
it's
yeah,
not as
he's.
bad as Barbie Video Game Hero,
Oh,
which
Oh, yeah.
intentionally,
no.
to mimic the anime style,
Oh,
3D
no.
CG, they animate on like threes.
Oh, don't like that. Ugh,
Yeah, it was rough. Anyway,
that sounds rough. But yeah, so Nuju, he doesn't got much going on. He looks cool. He's
yeah,
he's they use his voice actor as background voices a lot. Um, he's all right.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't have much to say about him.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
Wenua, he's the Earth one. He's the archivist you mentioned before.
Hmm.
Um, I have absolutely no read on his character.
They do this a lot with the Toa of Earth, where they're like, all we're gonna give you for his character is that he's got this nice booming voice, and he's strong, probably. Um,
Which for an archivist, that's like interesting. That's not what I would primarily associate with archiving
I
things.
mean, when you see what they archive, then maybe.
Well, yeah, yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it's he's an interesting one. He's very much like his arc is weird because we also like we just don't see a lot of his character, and it's hard to tell if his arc is like the, the arc that they say for him for from the Taraga, right, is that he's too focused on the past being an archivist. He needs to focus on the present. I think this is a good example of them saying like this is telling and not showing.
yeah.
Where it's like I don't really know that he was too focused on the past, or at least you didn't show us that, and I don't know that he's more focused on the present after that. I think more likely his arc is a little bit like I'm restrained and now I'm expressive. Like I'm tired of being angry on the inside. I'm going to be angry on the outside now.
By
And
turning my
even
face into a flashlight.
yeah, I guess trusting his friends is another
Yeah,
part of it. I don't know. He's not very well done in this movie, unfortunately.
yeah. I
Uh,
just didn't get a sense for his character. I did get slightly more of a sense for Onewa, the
mm,
stone, the builder guy, aka the racist one.
yeah, yeah. I
that's
think
that's
that's
what I
that's kind of apt.
that's what I understood from his characterization. Maybe not like racist has a lot of connotations that maybe don't quite apply
The
to him.
unfiltered,
More like
opinionated one.
yeah,
Yeah,
more in the way that like different fans of different sports teams dislike the other teams than actual like hardcore prejudice.
Yeah, this is the student in class that's just way too political all the time. Like has very strong political opinions and but like maybe doesn't think about them very much. It's just like, yeah, I watch one news channel and that's my personality. Um and I guess his arc is from egocentric and prideful to understanding and humble. He gets I would say he gets the best arc of these three.
Yeah.
Um but that's just because he starts out as just
So mean.
so mean to start with. And then he's like, oh, I guess, the people are
Suddenly he
people.
wasn't racist
Yeah.
anymore. Although not really,
Uh,
because it's you don't. I don't know if it's an arc or if it's just like two moments that he moves between.
yeah. Yeah. It's very digital in that. It's not like this like smooth progression. It's just like I am mean and now I have to use my mask power to force you to sit on the ground so I understand you better.
Somehow. Yeah,
Oh.
his mass power relating to him growing as a person does not make sense to me.
It's like, aha, I now have the power to control people. Just what I
Yeah.
always wanted.
Yeah.
But I guess now that I learned to just not be mean and have more respect, I could use that power for good instead of how I would normally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, his arc was not working for me,
Yeah, it's
but
also so just a confusing thing on my side. I recently watched through this just like on second monitor. I was working on something, so I had it just listening to it, and then I rewatched it last night, like fully paying attention, and because he and Matau are voiced by the same person, it
Yeah.
gets confusing sometimes because they're also both kind of rude and mean too.
yeah,
So
Mattel is a little bit Irish because of what they're trying to do.
yeah, slightly Irish and kind of uses the in the previous movie, Toa Liwa uses the tree speak where they combine similar words together. He does in this as well, although in Metru Nui it's called shoot speak because they have the shoots of water. Uh, Lee Metru is kind of the transportation hub of the city, and you kind of hear that on occasion, but you can kind of tell that the voice actor was like unsure what to do with it and was like, this
yeah,
feels really unnatural. I'm just going to read this as if I'm not doing that.
yeah. To me, it sounded more like him saying synonyms to try and get people to react
Yeah.
rather than an actual like vocal affectation.
Yeah. And it does lead to him saying things in a weird way too. Like when he's impersonating Nadiki and Kreka, he's like, uh, I told you to go the other way. Now circle the other way back. And it's like, is that shoot speak? I think if I was saying now circle the other way back, I think that's a normal sentence, but he's saying that as if it's shoot speak. So
Yeah,
now I don't know. uh, yeah, it's so going back just because I remembered to Wenua. I was looking at the masks and the character names specifically for these because this is like because they're using characters and masks from the original release. Um, a lot of them are also based off of the language of the Maori people, and most of these are actually not. But Wenua actually both he and his mask power, like his name and his mask power, originate from Maori. Um, Wenua, or in Maori, Whenua, because they pronounce the WH as an F sound, means earth, which makes sense. It's kind of like it gives the notion of like a mother earth, because it can also mean things like placenta or like origin or like homeland. Um, so that's pretty cool. His mask, which is the Kanohi Ruru, uh, Ruru means owl, so that makes sense. He can see in the dark. Um, to speak on his mask power a little bit, to add a little bit more understanding, it's not that his mask power is the mask of like being a flashlight. It's that it's the mask of night vision. He
Okay.
can, as a great mask, he can either just naturally see in the dark, or he can illuminate a light projecting from his mask, bright enough in this movie to be able to see through walls at one point. I don't know how that works, but we'll go with
Sure.
it.
Why not?
Yeah. As a Taraga, it only gives him the ability to see in the dark. He can't flashlight. But yeah, it is in this movie just a flashlight mask.
I would be a little bit disappointed if it's like you're a Toa now. It's like, what's my mask power? Flashlight.
You don't have to carry a flashlight with you anymore. Your face glows. Woo.
It's like I've carried my phone with me anyway.
Yeah.
Uh,
I guess Vakama's mask power also is his is the Kanohi Huna, which Huna also means like hidden in Maori. Uh, but those are the only translations that I found. There are some, like some of the words do mean other words, but it doesn't really uh, make sense. And like the mask of mind control, the Kanohi Komau, sounds like it should be a Maori word, but I looked it up and it translates potentially to the word like you, but I don't really know.
yeah, I could see like and it is interesting that they're using so many Maori words. I kind of suspect it's like, okay, we just need to quickly come up with a lot of names. And
Yeah.
it's easier to do that if we have a dictionary in front of us where we can just point to a name and be like, okay, this one sounds good.
Yeah.
Which then does lead to issues in terms of like cultural sensitivity.
Yeah.
And obviously, they did not then ask any Maori people for input on
Right.
that, which then led
Right.
to legal issues, which we talked a bit about in the last episode. But yeah,
Yeah. And by this point in the franchise, they've really fixed a lot of those issues.
yeah,
Most of the characters they're introducing just sound vaguely of that same like pronunciation or whatnot. I don't think Dume or Turaga Duma is. I don't think Duma is a translation of anything. I think they just
yeah,
wanted to make it sound like a Doom and
yeah.
rolled with that.
It's French, I think.
My
uh,
autocorrect kept or putting it to Dune,
Dune.
Taraga Dune.
Yeah, we love Turaga Dune. Uh, yeah, he's the Lisan al Gaib.
Oh boy, Bionicle slash Dune. That would be incomprehensible lore wise. I don't even want to think about it. Anyway, while we're still talking about Toa, who were your favorite Toa in this?
Oh, it's hard because half of them are not really characterized. I think I do rewatching. I think I really enjoyed Nokama a lot more. I think she added a lot of underlying value to the whole team. Um, versus like Vakama, I think speaks a lot more to like teenagers in a lot of ways. Getting over the self confidence issues and really coming into your own. Nokama, I think, is more. At least I've enjoyed her more now that I'm an adult, and I'm like, okay, it's more about understanding my limitations and my responsibilities in accordance to others. So in a lot of ways, I really enjoyed her in this most previous watch through.
Yeah, growing up, my favorite character was Matao because he's the funny one. He's the green
Hmm.
one. He's the swords. Like he has this such a manic energy that it's like you can't help but just you can't look away from him because he's in your face all the time,
Yeah.
and that's he was fun. I like that, but now that I'm more order, I kind of gravitate towards Vakama because it's his film. It's his
Hmm.
main journey, and it's a type of journey that is easily accessible to just most people. Growing into confidence of just being confident and just not being hidden.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. I like Nokama and Wakaba. Um, Nokama because she's the girl one, and that I tend to enjoy the girl one character when there's one girl one in these boy franchises. And then yeah, Vakama, as John was saying, he has the arc that is the most in depth explored here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, plus no
Yeah.
comma is just the smart, wise one as well.
Yeah.
It is ironic looking back at these. The two of these that I owned sets for were Onewa and Matao, who are probably my least favorite watching the
That is
movie.
funny. Speaking of Toa, we've got one
Yeah.
more Toa to discuss,
Mm.
and that is the last Toa, Toa Lacan,
Lacan.
who is not to clarify. Uh, the Kreka at the beginning says the last Toa. He's not literally the last Toa, but he is the last Toa in Metru Nui. Lacan's story in this film is very much that like mentor role for sure. He's the role model. He's the like everybody looks up to Lacan. Lacan's story in the books is the same, but his past, he's not from Metru Nui for one. He all the Toa in Metru Nui, I believe, uh, died, or there weren't a lot of Toa to begin with. I believe Turaga Duma was the last Toa in Metru Nui for a while, before it became a Turaga. Um, Likan, along with a bunch of other Toa, came to the city to defend against the Dark Hunters who were attacking a bunch. Um, and eventually, uh, Nadiki, who we know, is the one that tries to put a plan into motion to save the city, but in doing so, he has to betray all of his allies. Um, and so he's like, you know what? I'll give the city over to the Dark Hunters. It'll mean that the war will be ended, but it will mean that they're gonna take all my allies and probably kill them. Lacan finds out about this, not too happy, but he uses that as a trap and uses that as means of defeating the Dark Hunters. And then in the end is like, yo, Nadiki, we don't trust you anymore. So you can go be with your friends, the Dark Hunters. Have fun. Um, in the meantime, the remaining Toa, at this point, I believe there's 11 left alive in Metru Nui. They stay behind. They give some help. Um, the Turaga Duma, now controlled by Makuta, um, is like, okay, what we need to do is we need to cut off all passages to Metru Nui. We need to like lock it down. We need to make sure that nobody else can come in and out. Um, and this is kind of a dual purpose thing. It makes it so that he can send the Toa out to block off Metru Nui, but it means he can also send the Toa out individually and get them killed. So all the other Toa are killed. The last one alive is Likan. Um, and he, at this point, has figured out, okay, the Makuta is trying to take over the city. I don't know how. I don't know what he's doing. but something's going wrong. And so he's trying to manage the whole city by himself. And he's like, we just need more Toa here. I think it's time. I'm going to give up some of my power and we're going to get some new Toa. And uh, the like, that's when he gets manipulated and counter manipulated into choosing the Toa that we see. The Matoran from the set release, those were supposed to be the ones that were the Toa because they found the great discs, but we got the cooler ones, I guess.
Sucks to be those Matoran.
Yeah.
Although maybe it's nicer to not be the Toa.
Yeah, in some ways, I think so.
Less responsibility.
Yeah. But yeah, Lacan as a character, he's been through a lot. His first Toa team was completely killed. He was the last survivor of that, and then he moved to Metru Nui, had to fight off the Dark Hunters for years, and then all of his Toa team was killed again. So he's dealt with a lot. And in this movie, like, I think he's by the end of it kind of happy to go because he knows that what he's done has contributed to the future and specifically to Vakama, who will be paving the way for him now. We don't see a lot of him in this movie as a Toa. Mostly we see him as a Turaga. And admittedly, the end scene with him dying confused me as a kid because I was like, he just could have just took your shield. Why are you dying? If somebody stole my surfboard, I'd be okay, probably. I don't really know why he died there. I think it's because maybe he had to use some of his energy to break through the like temporal barrier from the Mask of Time, or maybe there's something to do with his shield holding a lot of his power.
Or maybe
I
like
mean,
the hand thing touched him a little bit and it sucked some
Yeah,
life. I don't know.
he's
got the
also
bad
just a
touch.
mentor, and mentor figures have to die at some point. So maybe it's just he died of plot.
He died of plot. Oof.
He's
Hate to diagnose you with plot.
he's a Taraga. It's kind of weak, you know. If they were pushed back and hit against the rock, you know, they'd probably die too. A normal old person.
True. We've got Lyme joint disease, brittle bones. Um, but yeah, so I will admit though, I liked that it was refreshing, especially coming from the last movie, that his death was permanent. As a
Yeah,
kid, I was like, oh, this is very sad. He's gonna come back though, right? Right? But as I've gotten older, I like that his death was more permanent. I will say his death is kind of just a reused plot line from the previous movie with, you know,
yeah.
literally the character with the same color scheme and mask dying. Um, and like in the last movie, you know, Jaller dies, and then comes back to life. In this one, same mask, he dies right in front of the character that's about to understand his new powers. It could have been a little bit more creative, but it is what it is.
I mean, at least this time it was permanent.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's not too much else to say for Lacan. He
Yeah,
could have been a little bit more clear about what he meant by the heart of Metru Nui,
yeah.
but
Sure. I mean,
Which I mean, oh, go ahead, John.
that was a dream from Vakama versus
that's
actual
true.
Lacan. But
Plus, at that point, he might have already been diagnosed with plot, so
Yeah,
he might have to speak in riddles
riddles.
and
Yeah.
pronouns to get his point across rather than full
mhm.
names.
Yep.
Uh,
That is dying of too much plot. It's a common thing. It's also a reason for breakups in movies.
True. True. I think he serves his role in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
He is what he is. He doesn't need to be too much more. He's the iconic hero. That's
Mm.
that's what every one of these Matoran look up to.
He had the
Um,
coolest sword shields.
oh yeah, that like such a cool like it. As far as the set goes, it's him with a Kikanalo is the set, and that is the only time they ever use those like sword shield things, and it's in like a it's not in a main set, it's in a Titan set that's released later on in the year. And like I was always dumbfounded, like, why didn't they release more of these? This is so cool. Um, but it did inspire, I think, in Generation 2 of Bionicle, there's a few pieces that look rather similar that can combine into like a shield shape. Um,
Yeah.
and so I at least his legacy lives on there too. But very cool set, very cool character. His mask, one discrepancy about him is that his mask is the mask of shielding. It's the same that Tahu wears. But his set form mask looks very different. And canonically, it's still a Kanohi Hao, but it looks different. And that's when they start to introduce, oh, there's some masks that look like other like different from normal masks, but do the same thing. Or some masks that maybe look like other masks, but have different powers from what they look like. And that's part of it that I feel like is a
Also,
bit
the mask
convoluted.
transforms into the actual How
Yeah,
when it's put on to Jollar.
yeah. I guess at that point it's a noble how because it's been sucked of its energies.
Okay.
Lore.
More collectibles.
More
Yeah.
collectibles. uh
Yeah. So our villains here, we have Makuta, who we talked a bit about him as Makuta. I think he's really much more interesting when he is playing the part of Turaga Duma, having to be this like leader who's, he's introducing all of these, like, I mean, he's a dystopian leader. Everyone
mhm.
kind of looks up to him and trusts him, but he's using that trust to undermine them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely adds more to his character than him being just like I am evil because I am evil. It's like, oh, I'm also evil and cunning.
Yeah.
I've got this whole plan worked out. Um,
And
I
then when he
appreciate.
turns into, oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. I was
Oh,
about
I
to say.
was just gonna say when he turns back into regular Makuta, I was a little bit like, okay, that's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, yeah. They also same with this movie and the past movie. They have this similar um, anti-violence thing of all the heroes have these weapons and tools. The disc launcher is only ever fired at Makuta to get the mask of life or the mask of time out of his hands, um, instead of like trying to decapitate him or anything, which is probably better for the children's story. Um,
You should have gone for the head.
should have gone for the head. Um, but yeah, like it's interesting because in this movie, it's almost a double blow to Makuta that he's not defeated like physically per se, he's defeated mentally.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's the one that's been playing chess with the entire population of Metru Nui up until this point. Um, and so that's kind of fun. But overall, when he's like after he's you know taken off the Duma mask and is like, haha, I was the bad guy the whole time. Uh, it does kind of he's less interesting. Although he does just like eat people now. He's just like,
Yeah.
hey, you guys are cool. I want your pieces. You're part of me now.
Me with
Uh,
my Lego sets.
yeah, literally. Which for that side of it, where it's like, oh yeah, he takes people's pieces and adds them to himself is pretty cool in and of itself.
But he's
Roderick
just
the
the same as he
Grafted.
was in the last film, but with wings.
Yeah, which is like kind of his origin story of how he got that way for the last film.
I guess.
I guess. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a little.
yeah. Now, speaking of who he gets the parts from, the Dark Hunters here.
Mhm.
They have that classic evil henchman dynamic of the competent one and the bumbling one. Um, the one that I thought of immediately was Barbie and the Secret Door. I don't even remember what those two were called. The like roly poly things. One of them is like the competent one, and the other one has a stuffed up nose, so he can't smell the
Sniffers?
unicorn. Snifflers, yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. Was it Malusha? Was she the bad guy? She was the best bad guy in those Barbie movies.
I don't
She was
know.
hilarious.
But
I mean, Preminger, but yeah.
she was
Anyway,
voiced by Tabitha St. Germain, so like
yes.
that. Anyway, uh yeah. Nadiki, former Toa.
Yeah,
You don't really get that from this though.
yeah. The only thing we got is that Lacan is there. He calls Lacan brother a lot.
Brother.
Now, obviously, Nadiki does not look like a Toa. A lot of Nadiki's story is explained later on in different stories. Um, I mentioned how he betrayed them and kind of gets uh, turned into a Dark Hunter. He also, through betraying the Dark Hunters and trying to sell them out, gets caught and then mutated into who he is now. He's actually mutated into this by someone who we'll meet in the next film, Rudaka, who has a long history with the Dark Hunters and with the Makuta. And he's interesting. I wish they would have shown a little bit more about like he's not really an outsider to Metru Nui. He used to protect it, and I kind of wish they showed that a little bit more. Um, I wish they
Yeah,
showed
we don't
just
get that
more
dynamic at
dynamics.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you'd have to think a lot of the Limator and the green ones would know Nadiki pretty well. They might not
Yeah.
recognize him like this, but like it would have been cool to see. Um, he picks up that one Matoran by the foot to flip
Kongu.
the yeah, it's Kongu. Um, to flip the direction of the shoots. Um, could have played into that scene a little bit maybe, but again, I know they have a 70-minute runtime.
Yeah. Lot of lore for 70 minutes.
Yeah. Story wise, the Makuta working with the Dark Hunters is an interesting thing for the franchise. Obviously, this is the movie that introduces the Dark Hunters. They're kind of their own organization. They're not Toa, they're not Makuta. They're their own thing. Um, Makuta absorbing them into himself actually is something that causes strife between the Makuta and the whole Brotherhood of or not the Dark Hunters. Goodness sake, there's a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
um, uh, later on, um, actually when they go back and find the Mask of Time, um, but so it does set up for that side of things. In fact, this whole movie sets up the kind of I hate that I'm going this direction. The political atmosphere of the Bionicle universe after this starts to actually become a thing. In the first movie, it's like, yeah, they got villages and it's nice and peaceful. In
Yeah.
this one, it's like the production of this resource doesn't exist because they closed off the gateways, and that's why there's strife between. It gets a little complicated. But yeah.
It's the trade dispute from Phantom Menace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very very Star Wars prequel.
Once you understand what they're actually doing, it's like, okay, I get it. But as a little kid, it's like, huh, I don't know what that means, but okay, they're bad
Why are we
guys. I
spending
get
this much
that.
time in the Senate?
Yeah. Yeah, at
We
least in
we
this movie, there's they don't really touch on that. It's like, hey, if you want the extra lore, you can learn about the political atmosphere of Metru Nui. That's all
You got the
DLC though.
sea of protodermis.
True.
Two
Which
of
is
them.
funny. Yeah, like Protodermis is kind of just like the unobtain the unobtainium of this world, where it's like we made up a material and it can be anything. It can be water, it can be steel, proto steel, it can be shiny water with energized protodermis. It could be a lot of things.
It could
Depending on who you
be
are,
a
you can
hexagon
control
pillar.
different
I don't
parts.
know.
Yeah, like I guess.
Why not?
Uh, good old protodermis.
Yeah. Sidebar: when Makuta or Turaga Duma in the Colosseum is like, "You will now cross the sea of protodermis." I didn't realize at first that it was supposed to be metaphorical, and then these
Mm,
pillars just start shooting up out of the ground, and I'm like, "What kind of sea is this?"
yeah,
And then they call back to it later, and I'm like, "Okay, now I understand." But that was not obvious at first.
Does the real sea of protodermis actually just put up spikes for no reason? I don't know. It's
it's a good question. They don't explore it, as far as I'm aware.
mhm. Anyway.
Uh,
So yeah, I give the characters overall a 3.5 out of 5. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I'll stand by it though. I think they're interesting. A lot of them are, especially Vakama. But again, the 70-minute runtime, there just isn't enough time to explore everyone as much as that.
yeah,
I also gave it 3.5, which is slightly better than the last film. Slightly. There, more characters have more stuff, but
that's
not
fair.
enough to really be fair.
Yeah, I gave it a 3 because I think with the last film, because they had a big cast, but they really focused down on their main two characters. And in this one, like they do have Vakama as like the main character, and they do a similar sort of focus here. I still think the characterization of Takua is just a little bit more deep um, than Vakama, and so for me, I felt like the characters uh, in the last film were just a little bit better. So I rated it a 3.
So yeah, on to the visuals.
It's a
We've
lot
talked.
prettier.
Yeah, yeah, it just looks better overall. I think they're more aware of their limitations here. I think especially
Yeah.
when it comes to action, the action scenes are mostly just people shooting beams at each other and dodging, and
Hmm.
that works so much better than the like crossing swords of the last one, which
Yeah, it's definitely more planned out. Um, just all the action. Most of the time, even in this movie, they use slow mo quite a few times, and they actually plan it out beforehand. The
yeah.
part where Vakama's falling into the cauldron, that's all slow mo. The mask of time, that's all slow mo. There are moments that they should have thought more about to make slow mo, but in general, quite a bit more planned for all the action, which I much appreciated. The other big side is just like in general, you can tell that the technology has advanced a little bit, or the animators have gotten a lot more comfortable, or maybe both, because now instead of everything just being whatever color they need it to be and shiny, they've added a lot of textures to everything. And it's not just like flat textures either. They have like bump maps, and it's you can see light reflecting off of things in different ways, and everything just looks a little bit more polished in general, which I think makes it just that much better of a viewing experience. There's small cracks on masks or small dents here and there, and it looks a lot better.
Mhm. Each district also feels more unique in how they're portrayed in this film, whereas the last film, most of what we saw, we very rarely saw something outside of just we're in an area where there's rock. There was a lot of rock. Here, there's still rock, but we get to see everything in those different montages, and it's like, huh, that looks like a fun place. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
want to
Yeah, and
explore.
the city just looks great. I compared it to Coruscant, which I think Coruscant also looks pretty cool um,
yeah,
as a location. But yeah, it's just yeah, just the buildings look interesting, and there's unique architecture, and yeah, it was just kind of fun to see all of the various locations. Whereas last time it was like, oh, there's a new location. Okay, now it's snowy. Sure, why not? Here it feels like there's a bit more character in the designs.
yeah. I think it helps a lot that the island that they're at now too, speaking on like the location, um is a smaller island than the island of Matanui, and it I think this movie almost makes it feels like it's the opposite because it feels like a bigger world. But it's like the comparison of like Matanui, the island, is like New Zealand in a lot of ways. It is big, it's expansive, it has a lot of different biome diversity, but it's mostly just land. Like there's a lot of open spaces, there's a lot of places where humans have not like settled down, or in this case, is the Matoran haven't settled down. There's mostly just a few cities around versus Metronui, which is like the city of New York. Like every square inch has been used for something. There's a building everywhere. And population wise, that it's actually not too far off. New Zealand has a population of 5 million, where New York City has a population of 8 million. So, like, it's about accurate, but, at a fraction of the size, too. Um, so it's interesting how they unintentionally or maybe intentionally use the size of the island in that way. That was kind of a realization as I was watching through. Um, but yeah, just the world visually, every part of this movie feels more like it's part of a bigger world.
Yeah. And I mean, even just from like a simple shot perspective, there are some really great shots here. There's one where they're in the Coliseum and it like the camera is zooming around and it zooms out and you get that was cool. We mentioned the shot of Matanui falling asleep and like the lore behind that, but it's also just a cool shot of like the two moons being eclipsed.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of
Um,
eclipses, you know, we
yep.
recently had that one.
True. Did our
Oh,
universe fall asleep too?
I was thinking
probably.
that he's a
Right.
cyclops.
uh, yeah, but yeah, in general, like visually a lot better. The weird fleshy bits from the last movie have kind of become more cabled on the characters to where it's a little bit more natural of a, oh, I could see how that's like organic, but it's biomechanical. It's not
Yeah, yeah.
just like it's not like an insect wearing armor, or like a crustacean, I guess, where the armor is on the outside. It's like this is metal is both part of them and not fully them. So I think in general, like the stylization is just a little bit better. Um, and they do a good job of adapting most of the pieces um, pretty well. I think it's still in the same style as the former movie. So like some of the masks look a little bit different in this than they do on the sets, but I think they do a little bit of a better job representing. The one area that this is, I would say, not super true for is all the Vaki and Nadiki,
Yeah.
where
Mm.
in the sets they have these giant disc launchers mounted to them, and in this it's kind of just like spikes. Um, but I don't know how like the to put a like time frame. The heroes were released at the beginning of 2004. The Vaki were released in during the summer release, and the movie was released in October. So they probably didn't have the final version of the Vaki when they made this movie.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah, and that's something we also talked about with the last one of some time, meaning that maybe they didn't have the correct character models, or the final character models when they were starting animation.
yeah, yeah, but overall, still turned out pretty good. I think this
Yeah.
is between this and the last movie. I like these character designs a little bit more. They just feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. I gave this a 3 out of 5. Definite improvement from the last one, though there's still a little bit of space. Like, this is still, 2004 animation, so it has made for DVD animation even. So
Mm.
there's still a little bit of improvement that could be had.
And how you gave it a
Yeah,
3.5.
yeah, same here. I think it's better than the last film, but it's also made in 2004
Yeah.
for a direct DVD release. So yeah, there are also visually. I was watching this movie again with a little bit more of an animator mindset. There's a there's quite a few mistakes in this movie.
Oh.
Um, most of them aren't major. Some of it's just like the lighting in this spot is only reflecting like a small dot on their mask, but it's probably more likely to be an ambient lighting. But whatever. But one of the ones that I noticed is at the beginning where they have the Toa stones and they put it into the like the Toa Suva that turns them into the Toa. Uh, Nokama's lights up and she looks over at the Suva and the Suva has a spot on it that lights up. But the symbol that it's showing is the symbol for Kometru, not for Gametru, where she's from. And all the others put theirs into the right slot except for probably Nuju. We don't see his. Um, but that's incorrect. And I was like, that's okay, weird, but all right. Maybe they just didn't know.
Yeah. Perhaps an animator didn't get the correct memo on which one was which.
Yeah, or already made the Suva and was like,
Yeah.
this is the one that's closest to them, and I don't want to have to move it. They're both like bluish white. It'll be fine. But yeah, there's a few times when, and this movie's credit, this does not happen frequently, but there's a few times where there's a little bit of clipping where like the armor moves into like the torso or things like that. That's to be expected. I'm actually impressed that they don't have more of that in this movie. Um, but yeah, just a few animation issues, pretty common for this type of movie, and
Yeah.
I think I'm
Especially
usually
in
noticing it more.
2004.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, good old 2004 animation.
Yep.
Gotta love it.
So yeah, performances. We have a lot of familiar voices for people who have been listening for a long time. Taraga Vakama, once again played by Christopher Gaze, who in a lot of the Barbie movies. Same with Michael Dobson playing Toa Likan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tabitha St. Germain as Nokama. Brian Drummond as Onewa. Um, and
And
Mattel.
Mafto.
Yep. Alessandro Giuliani, who was great as Prince Nalu in the Barbie Fairytopia movies, playing
Sure.
Vakama here. And I was excited to see him in
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just more fun people that I recognize from other stuff.
Yeah. I think for me, the standout was Gerard Plunkett as Turaga Duma. He just, the second he spoke, I was like, oh wow, he has presence that you need for this role. Um, and I was
Hmm.
surprised because he hasn't been in a whole lot. I was looking at his IMDb, and he was in Snow White, but not the Disney Snow White, Alice in Wonderland, but not the Disney Alice in Wonderland, Hunchback of Notre Dame, but not the Disney Hunchback of Notre Dame, Titanic, but not the James Cameron Titanic. So he's in like these things that are adjacent to things that are very popular, but aren't, they're like the made for TV versions of those things.
Right.
Um, Although the Titanic one did come out before James Cameron's Titanic by 1 year, so
Whoa.
it's a TV miniseries.
That's funny.
But yeah, I was surprised that I haven't. I thought I recognized his voice because he just has such a presence. But
He does.
yeah,
Yeah, no, he does a great job.
yeah,
Yeah. Overall, like pretty solid performances. There are a few
yeah,
lines that are said weird. Specifically Matau has a lot of weirdly phrased lines. There's a few that get stuck in my head between his lines and Kreka saying "Get Nadiki." It's just it's playing on a loop in there.
Nadiki. Nadiki.
Nadiki. It's just
we
so
don't have any Takua.
yeah. Unfortunately, we do not have that.
Or perhaps fortunately.
Yeah, it depends.
Hmm.
Yeah, but overall, pretty good performances. I think
Yeah,
Vakama does a great job of actually all of the characters that are Taraga in the neck in the last film forward in the timeline do a good job of imitating those voice actors in like a younger form. So obviously Vakama in this is British, and that's most of it. But I feel like the performance for No Kama does a really good job of imitating the like few voice lines that we get from the first movie. And same with Onewa. I did not look up to see if they were the same voice actors. I don't
They're
think
not.
they are. But I do think they do a pretty good job of being a plausible younger version of those characters. Um, so again, it's only three of them, and two of those three get like maybe one voice line each,
yeah,
but still not bad. Still pretty solid, I think.
yeah. Yeah, overall, I gave the voice acting a 3.5 out of 5.
I gave it a 4.
I gave it a 4 as well. Again, there's some awkward lines, but there's no Takua. So I think that bumps it up just a little bit in my mind.
Yep.
As much as I love it, don't get me wrong. I think there's love and then there's quality.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Now onto the sound slash score. I didn't notice it nearly as much in this one. I didn't find it nearly as memorable, but it's not bad.
hmm I see. I personally, I think because I watched this and the following movie a lot
Yeah.
more, the Metro Nui scores for me really stand out a lot, especially with the ending of this film, ending with the Matoran like song, the dun 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 dun,
Hmm.
which I don't remember if it is in the first film or not, but I feel like uh that score is just so iconic to me uh that even if it was just that one alone that I remembered, I would rate this higher. But I think a lot of like the heroic songs that they have really gesture to just how like big the city is, how grand the efforts are. And at the same time, this is coming out around the same time as like the Spider-Man movies, the live action Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. And a lot of the sounds similar to that. It- So you get that like tie-in of you're in this big city as a brand new superhero. Here's your soundtrack. So I really like the sound in this one.
John, do you
Yeah.
remember who does the Sam Raimi Spider-Man scores?
Yeah, Danny Elfman.
Okay, I
Oh,
thought
yeah,
that might
sounds
be who it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, I just didn't really notice the score, which is, I mean, that's when a score is doing its job. That is often what happens. I would have to sit down and listen to it on its
I
own to
mean,
make a final judgment on it.
me and Toa have watched these films many times that the score is just
Yep.
ingrained in our brains.
yeah.
And as I realized while watching this is my first time watching it. So
Fair. I think the one major difference between this and the previous film is that the previous film, the score matches a lot of what's happening on the screen. So like they'll add like cute little trumpet sounds or like fun little sound effects into the score, indicating, oh, that was a little funny thing that Takua just did, or things like that. Whereas in this one, they don't have as much of that. It's still there, but it's not exactly those sound effects. It's just more implied. Um,
I
and for
wonder if
me, oh, go ahead.
maybe it was pre-recorded before before they had the final. I guess they wouldn't have had the final for the other one either, but
Yeah,
maybe that was done based on storyboards or something.
yeah. It could also be that after Nathan first did the first one, they had a little bit more trust in him, and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll let you do your own thing a little bit more. Um, and he got to express himself a little bit. I don't
It
really
could
know.
be also that there's more going on in terms of the story and dialogue, so the film doesn't need to rely on music to carry moments as much.
That's also true. I think as if you're just looking at it as a listening experience, I oftentimes when I want to listen to the Bionicle soundtrack just without the movie, I listen to Bionicle 2 and Bionicle 3 mostly. Um, Bionicle 1 is still good, but I think Bionicle 2 is where the music is at a really good spot for just like having on as background music for myself.
Hmm.
So I very much enjoy the sound in this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I should really listen to it isolated to get a better sense for it.
It's
I gave
good
it a
like
4.
yeah. It's good inspiring like work music for me. If I'm like, oh, I
Sure.
need to work on this code, but I don't know if I'm gonna get it done on time. I'm like, Bionicle soundtrack. I'll feel more inspired to do it.
Hmm.
Um, Overall, in the takeaway of this film, it ties in with the last film in that a big part of the Bionicle franchise centers around finding out who you are, finding out what your destiny is, um, finding going back to the three virtues, um, unity, duty, and destiny, finding like-minded people, working daily with them to achieve a final goal is are the three virtues that it pushes forward. And in this film, um, the idea of getting to know oneself better uh, is further portrayed, um, not in the same way as in the first film, but it's explained in a different way. And I think different the different films appeal to different people in cool and different ways. I'm saying
Hmm.
different a lot, but um, there's specifically a quote in the film said by It's Ragged Lee Khan. And again, he's kind of the like, we need to explain something to the audience, so we're gonna make the cool guy with the nice voice say it. But it sets up the idea pretty well, where he says, "Without self-discovery, you will never find your destiny." And I think that's a good like overarching um, synopsis for what the characters have to go through in this episode. In this, yeah, we'll say episode of Bionicle lore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in general, I like that a lot of Bionicle lore is centered around finding oneself and working together to achieve good goals.
Yeah.
That sets nice morals for the kids watching and playing
Mm-hmm.
along.
And that's why I ended up with a total score of 18.5, which is a 74% or a 3.7 5-star rating.
I also ended up with that exact same score. It was different up until last few minutes when I changed my sound score up a
Mm-hmm.
little bit higher because I was just thinking about the soundtrack and being like, oh, I actually really like the soundtrack.
Yeah, and I have a 17, which is a 68% or a 3.4. So an improvement on the last one for my score. Actually, I think for all three of our scores.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, looks like it.
Yep.
Well, yeah, thank you everyone for. Oh, do you have final thoughts?
Oh, my only final thought was it's a good film, and honestly, in a lot of ways, I would almost recommend you watch this one first.
Yeah,
Um, just because it sets up the universe a little bit better. Um, and it makes it so that when you finally get to that first film, you're like, oh, I know Vakama. I know that little blue masked Matoran from the end of Bionicle 2 that is now the main character of Bionicle 1. That's cool. Um, but if you do want to watch it in like release order according to the story, I can totally understand that. I just think this one sets up a little bit more world building better.
yeah.
But yeah, overall, pretty solid movie.
Any final thoughts, John?
No, it's good. It is my favorite of the trilogy.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed this more than the first one. I'm excited for the third one because that seems like just aesthetically, it will be up my alley in a way that even this one wasn't quite there. So, but yeah, speaking of which, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram and Tumblr, Binging Barbie on Twitter and Serialized, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a 5-star review and go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Binging Barbie Podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about the third Bionicle movie, um, Web of Shadows, I'm going to
Yes.
say.
Yeah. You
Yes.
got it.
Yeah. And until then, what's the takeaway from this?
This
Um,
is the way of the Bionicle.
Yes, that is perfect.
That's how they end the movie. So I've got to do something.
save the hearts of Metru Nui.
Bye, Barbie.
Bye, Barbie.